A person in Marvel takes on the Avengers alone. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction. So don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 51. What kind of money do we make? Conquer the world, of course. Although Secretary of State Ross didn't achieve a complete victory, he still managed to outmaneuver SHIELD and the Avengers. The hearing wasn't a one-off event, and thanks to Ross's efforts, Congress temporarily lifted the ban on Rhodes's experiments. Ross immediately led several test volunteers to the military base laboratory. It's a pity Nick Fury isn't here today, otherwise I'd really like to see how grumpy he is. Ross chuckled, puffing on a cigar, his laughter hearty. The test volunteers have arrived, 3 prisoners and 1 disabled veteran. The rest are yours. Having finished his business, Ross was about to leave when Rhodes called him back. Come with me to the lab. Ross's eyes lit up. Both the serum and the life-extending potion were good news for him. The two took the elevator down to the underground laboratory. Rhodes swiped his card to open the door and retrieved a pink vial from a refrigerator. Ross asked eagerly, "It's successful?" Rory nodded. This drug increases the activity of hematopoietic stem cells and resets metabolism. It's very potent. According to supercomputing data, it can extend lifespan by at least 10 to 25 years and effectively treat various chronic diseases. This drug was created by Rory using serum from mice, Hollis, and the celestial gene. A mouse biting Peggy Carter could maintain her youth from 1970 to 2008, or even longer. Through Rory's experiments, he found a special active enzyme in the fungus in the mice's mouths. However, Rory didn't want to create a drug that could extend lifespan by decades, so he repeatedly experimented with other materials, finally obtaining this pink drug. Ross was thrilled upon hearing this, saying, "There will definitely be a lot of people scrambling to buy this. If it costs $1 billion per person, $1 billion for an extra 10 years of lifespan, the wealthy will definitely go crazy for it." Rory, uninterested in money, scoffed. "Why sell for money? Haven't you thought of something more meaningful?" Meaningful? What could be more meaningful than making money? Ross was bewildered. This was the standard by which the capitalist world measured a person's value. They didn't care about the person's character, as long as they had money, they were valuable. Rory shook his head. You can win over politicians and get them to support you as president. That way, you can change the world according to your own ideas, especially dealing with SHIELD and the Avengers. For some powerful figures in the secular world, the allure of longevity was paramount. Rory didn't want to act personally, so Ross could do it for him. Once the life-extending drug was proven effective, Rory would become their god. Ross was stunned for several seconds, then asked with a mixture of belief and doubt, "You mean we cooperate to control this country, even the entire world?" Ross wasn't an idiot. Rory's proposal couldn't be without conditions. Considering the current situation, Ross believed Rory's biggest enemy was the Avengers. By controlling the nation's upper echelons and then using the nation's influence to deal with the Avengers, Rory wouldn't even need to lift a finger to eliminate them. Ross guessed half right. In fact, Rory wanted even more. "What? Scared?" Rory smiled knowingly. Ross confidently replied, "What do I have to be afraid of? This is exactly what I want." At this very moment, a conspiracy targeting the entire world was being finalized within this laboratory. A biological scientist and a politician from the military were plotting a world-shaking scheme to seize control of the globe. The first step was to determine the effectiveness of this drug. Research on human lifespan had never ceased. Rory handed the data to Ross. A relevant professional institution could immediately verify its authenticity. Ross hurriedly left with the experimental data, while Rory went to the area where clinical volunteers were being received. The identities of these volunteers were easily confirmed. The tattooed one was a prisoner, and the one missing an arm was a disabled veteran. He took the documents from the guards and flipped through them page by page. Of the 3 prisoners, one was a perpetrator of violence against women, a gang member with several murders on his hands, and an economic criminal. None of them were innocent. The disabled veteran's injury wasn't from the battlefield. His teammate accidentally pulled the trigger during training, blowing off his arm. Because of his primary responsibility, the military office was unwilling to pay his future living expenses, but he still had a wife and daughter to support, so he volunteered to participate in this experiment so that his family could receive a large sum of money. Luo Rui signaled the guards to open the door, went inside, and casually found a place to sit. He first asked the three prisoners, "Tell me, why did you participate in this experiment?" What else could it be? Of course, we want to leave prison. I don't like your question. Just tell me when we can leave. The second to speak was a gang member, whose face clearly showed a fierce nature. Then Luo Rui looked at the third. This person appeared normal, just an ordinary person. Seeing Luo Rui looking at him, the man stammered, "I was wronged. I want to leave prison as soon as possible to go back to my family." Luo Rui stood up and pointed to the rapist and murderer, "You two come with me." The two looked at Luo Rui with disdain. The gang member even thought he could snap Luo Rui's neck with one hand. Several guards escorted the two to the laboratory, stacking their hands and feet to the experimental table. Luo Rui approached volunteer number 1 with a bone marrow aspiration needle. The gang member, his eyes gleaming with malice, said, "Kid, you better not hurt me, or I'll snap your neck and shove your head in." Having already volunteered for the clinical trial, Luo Rui didn't want to listen to his nonsense. He gagged the volunteer, turned the restraints around so the volunteer was facing backwards. BP activated the optical transillumination device, located the injection site, and marked it with a marker. He then attached the wiring to the various testing instruments. The bone marrow aspiration needle was then firmly inserted. Ugh! The subject's muscles tensed instantly, veins and blood vessels bulging, indicating intense pain. Luo Rui ignored the pain, inserting the needle in one go, and then injected the celestial gene. Sizzle, perhaps due to the rough handling, blood gushed out when the needle was pulled out. Clang clang clang, the subject convulsed and trembled in pain, the restraints rattling loudly. Luo Rui meticulously observed the data on the various machines, completely disregarding the experimental subject's life or death. The monitoring data indeed changed, various values surged rapidly. And a small number of cell membranes with energy-conducting functions began to appear in the blood cells. It really could fuse with ordinary humans. Even the Celestials probably never imagined that a human could obtain the special substance from the eternal race's bone marrow. The experimental subject had now returned to normal, its eyes gleaming with ferocity, its body visibly becoming more robust and its physique more proportionate, as if ready to devour someone at any moment. Luo Rui walked over, took out the puncture needle, and plunged it in again without hesitation. Chapter 52. Only God can prolong human life? I'm going to kill you. I'll definitely kill you, the test subject yelled as he struggled. Test subject number 1 glared fiercely at Luo Rui while struggling as well. Luo Rui said speechlessly, "You're really stupid enough to give me a headache. Kid, you've messed with me, I'm going to." Test subject number 1 continued to curse, but Luo Rui ignored him and continued with his work. He then extracted samples and tested the data. The final conclusion was that the celestial gene had indeed taken effect in him. Hematopoietic stem cells had changed the morphology of blood cells, altered metabolism, and were gradually restoring this person's physical condition to its peak. The strength of his skin tissue was also approaching that of the celestial race. All the data proved the experiment was successful. Even Luo Rui himself hadn't expected to succeed on the first try. He pushed the experimental bed aside and waved to the guards outside, arranged for the next one to come in. The laboratory door opened, and the rapist pleaded, "Sir, although I volunteered for the experiment, could you be gentler?" He didn't want to follow in test subject number 1's footsteps. But every injection hurts, and regardless of the outcome, he had made an outstanding contribution to the scientific research experiment. Skinny and frail, and only good at bullying women, he was definitely not a tough guy. The two guards couldn't hold him down immediately, so Luo Rui came over, lifted him up, and pinned him to the experimental bed, easily securing him with restraints. "You can leave now, I'll handle the rest myself." After dismissing the guards, Luo Rui reconnected the various instruments. For the second live experiment, Luo Rui prepared 2 doses of the drug. One was super soldier gene serum, and the other was celestial gene. He wanted to see what would happen after the celestial gene and the enhancement serum combined in the human body. The serum was injected into the bloodstream, and the gene into the bone marrow. First, the super soldier serum needed to take effect, and then it would be injected into the bone marrow a second time. As usual, a pig-like scream rang out, and Rory gagged him again. First, the super soldier serum was injected, then it was placed in a bioenergy cradle for enhancement. The serum's strength wasn't high, so using a more advanced bioenergy cradle, the serum enhancement was completed in just a few minutes. With a hiss, the man was pulled from the bioenergy cradle. The skinny, weak, and sleazy man looked like a completely different person. He no longer had Steve's perky buttocks, but he was much stronger than before. Wow me. Captain America? What kind of woman will I be with in the future? If it weren't for collecting saliva, Rory would never have removed the gag. After collecting the sample, he immediately gagged the man again. A dog who can't change his ways. He was moved back to the experimental table and restrained a second time with straps before the bone marrow aspiration injection began. The dog, who had been grinning just moments before, immediately stopped laughing after the needle went in. Rory thought he would smoothly fuse with his celestial gene like the previous one, but Rory was wrong. Just seconds after the injection, the subject's body began to show signs of collapse. Muscles rapidly atrophied, blood vessels turned from blue to black, and body hair fell out rapidly like autumn leaves. Rejection reaction? The celestial gene is rejecting the enhanced serum, but it wasn't like this during the cell experiments. What's going on? In the biological field, 1 + 1 = 2 is never true. Enhanced serum plus celestial gene equals 0. What if it were Rory's eternal gene instead? After fusing with the enhanced blood, the celestial gene didn't create cell membranes capable of conducting energy. Instead, it created an antagonistic reaction, attacking each other. The enhanced serum wasn't as powerful as the celestial gene, causing the blood cells to wither rapidly. This was the main reason for the experimental subject's unusual behavior. The next day, Rory arranged for his research assistants to perform a bone marrow aspiration experiment. After yesterday's experiment, Rory abandoned the idea of directly injecting the celestial gene. He'd rather endure the pain several times to ensure the success rate of the experiment. Using a vibranium needle made from Steve's shield fragments, the two research assistants pushed it slowly into Rory's lower back. The intense pain was indescribable. Wearing a pain mask, Rory lay on the experimental table, gritting his teeth and not uttering a sound. The extracted bone marrow was immediately sealed and preserved, with a small amount used for experiments. As Rory had predicted, the cells fused perfectly under the microscope, showing no rejection reaction, and the stem cell generation and division rate was much faster than that of Festus. However, Rory wasn't overjoyed with this conclusion. While the enhanced serum cells could also fuse with the celestial gene, a severe reaction immediately occurred after injection into the second test subject. Therefore, rigor is the proper attitude towards science. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Ross was peddling the drug everywhere, targeting high-ranking government officials and members of Congress. He approached them with reports from 3 testing agencies. The allure of increased lifespan is irresistible, especially to ambitious politicians and capitalists. Ross didn't want money, he wanted unwavering support. Ross named the drug the Immortality Potion, and the prerequisite for using it was joining the Immortality Society, a newly founded organization. Stimulated by the Immortality Potion, the Immortality Society's membership expanded rapidly, covering half of the American political scene in just half a month. Of course, some explicitly refused, even denouncing Rory as a heretic. Some clear-headed individuals saw through Ross's scheme, while others believed that defying death was disrespectful to one's faith and would surely lead to hell. As the influence of the Immortal Society rapidly expanded, some dubious rumors began to circulate, and some people quickly located the military base laboratory based on these rumors. Ross was prepared, strengthening security measures at Rory's laboratory. No one could approach it without his orders. At this time, Nick Fury also sensed a dangerous atmosphere. Ross is trying to control this country, we must stop him. How? The Secretary of State has the power of pardon, no one can touch him without a legitimate reason. Then let's investigate the source of the immortality serum, find out the truth, and find evidence. Hill turned to Nick Fury and asked, currently, we only know that the immortality serum leaked from the military base laboratory. Who should we send to investigate? Nick Fury pondered for a moment and said, the Avengers are not suitable to handle this. Leave it to me. While SHIELD was discussing strategies, Rory had already produced the first batch of immortality serum. Ross had already brought the first batch of users of the immortality serum to the laboratory. The first person to receive the immortality potion was a high-ranking military general. Before Rory administered the injection, the man suddenly asked, "Sir, I'd like to know if the immortality potion is a one-time use or reusable? If the raw materials are plentiful, a second or third injection is indeed possible, but the effect will be greatly reduced." What are the raw materials? The bone marrow of God. Chapter 53. Rushing along the road to becoming stronger. The immortality potion was just a minor incident for Rory. His main focus was on researching the celestial gene. After repeated experiments over this period, it was basically confirmed that Rory's bone marrow could fuse with the celestial gene, and it seemed that only the use of enhancement serum would cause a rejection reaction. Although Rory had enhanced himself, he didn't use the serum to enhance his own genes, but rather used the eternal gene to replace his own genes. The difference between the two was significant. After recording the experimental data, Rory got up and left the laboratory, removing his mask and goggles, and asked Ross, who had been waiting for a long time, "Didn't we already use the first batch of immortality potions? What are you doing here?" Ross looked radiant and in excellent health after just a few days. Even his gray hair had thinned considerably. Seeing Rory emerge from the lab, Ross approached and smiled. "I'd like to know when the second batch of immortality potions will be ready. Many people are waiting. If possible, I'd like you to produce more." Rory shook his head. "Impossible. We don't have the raw materials yet. Let's wait." Rory didn't understand the dirty tricks of politicians, but he knew he couldn't easily satisfy these people. They wouldn't work if their appetites weren't whetted. Ross quickly said, "You mentioned needing the bone marrow of a god. Could it be Asgardians? If so, I'll arrange for someone to get it for you immediately. You want to go to Asgard to traffic people?" Rory rolled his eyes and turned to leave. Ross quickly followed, curiously asking, "Not Asgardians? Could there be other aliens?" Earth had been visited by aliens quite a few times in recent years. Ross had seen all sorts of aliens and even personally encountered a few. Rory removed his experimental rubber gloves and tossed them into the trash can, saying, "Calling them aliens isn't entirely wrong, but it's not quite accurate. The gods and humans share the same genes, but the gods possess near-eternal life. I extracted the longevity potion element from them. The number of gods living on Earth is extremely small, no more than 10 in total. Each god can yield enough potion element to support a maximum of 50 people, so you'd better consider this carefully when selecting users for the immortality potion." Ross was stunned. He knew the immortality potion was precious, but he hadn't expected it to be this precious. According to Rory, there were at most 500 doses of the immortality potion, enough to support a maximum of 500 people even without reuse. And American politicians numbered far more than 500. "Rory, can't we think of another way? Or perhaps we can cultivate this element ourselves? What kind of pipe dream are you having?" Rory was, of course, lying. The god genes only played a supporting role in purification. What they really needed was simply the mold in the saliva of mice. If he didn't exaggerate its value, how would Ross cherish it? And how would those at the top, desperate to extend their lives, willingly work for him? Rory turned to Ross and said, "I'll be leaving for a while after my experiments are complete. If I'm lucky, I'll bring back some elements for making the Eternity Potion. What you need to do now is focus on your presidential campaign and then help me deal with SHIELD and the Avengers." Ideally, he'd disband the Avengers and then capture all those superhumans one by one for him to study carefully. Ross barely listened to the rest of what Rory said. His focus was entirely on Rory's departure. "Dr. Rory, you're leaving?" Rory's support was crucial. With Rory, Ross had the confidence to fight against superhumans. Even disregarding Rory's scientist status, he could still single-handedly take on powerful Avengers. Moreover, Ross needed to continue using the Eternity Potion to win over politicians. Rory leaving now would be like jumping off a train halfway through. Without Rory's help, he couldn't possibly reach the destination on his own. Rory could manipulate Ross, but Ross was powerless against Rory. "Don't worry, I'm just leaving for a while. It's not like I'm never coming back. What are you afraid of? Besides, if I don't go looking for the elements to make the immortality potion, are you the one who's going to go looking for them?" Over the next few days, Rory began experimenting with the celestial gene in various ways. He tested it on mice, Mr. Immortality, Captain America, and even his own blood and bone marrow. After countless calculations and simulations, the day finally arrived for Rory's first injection of the celestial gene. Rory dismissed everyone and locked himself in the underground laboratory to prepare for the injection experiment. According to his calculations, the success rate was over 90%, although there was still a possibility of failure, but Rory had to try. The longer he delayed, the more dangerous it would be for him. Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch might return at any time, not to mention Thor and Captain Marvel, those two ridiculously powerful guys. Rory inserted the syringe containing the celestial gene into the robotic arm, then secured himself to a chair, holding the remote control for the robotic arm. He connected to the body data monitoring system and activated the light-wave vision scanner to scan himself. After locating the correct position, he controlled the robotic arm to move to the predetermined injection site. After taking a deep breath, he controlled the robotic arm to begin its work. The vibranium needle, supported by a powerful hydraulic system, slowly pierced his body. The light-wave imaging device could clearly see the needle's location. If anything went wrong, Rory could immediately stop the injection experiment. Ugh! The pain didn't disappear as his body grew stronger. In fact, it amplified his pain perception due to heightened nerve sensitivity. PFFT, the vibranium needle inserted precisely, and Rory's heart leaped into his throat once more. A moment later, he pressed the remote control switch, and the celestial gene immediately flowed through the tubing into the needle, being injected into his bone marrow. After all the celestial gene was injected, the robotic arm activated its automatic program and immediately withdrew. Crunch! Crunch! Rory gritted his teeth, an indescribable pain spreading throughout his body. Holy shit! Roar! Boom! Rory roared as he broke free of the restraint chair, his arm sweeping forcefully, sending the chair flying the next second, crashing into the laboratory's glass wall with a crash. Unable to bear the pain, Rory pounded the ground repeatedly with his fists, trying to relieve it. Boom! 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 He pounded several deep craters into the solid laboratory floor. Crash! The lab table was overturned, and the experimental equipment was smashed to pieces, but even so, the excruciating pain remained unabated. Ah! Rory went berserk and smashed into a wall, punching right through the 20-centimeter thick wall. Rumble. Fuck you. Time seemed to stand still. The laboratory, as if struck by a typhoon, fell into an eerie silence. Rory, covered in dust, lay sprawled in the ruins. Suddenly, a finger twitched twice, and the unconscious Rory slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 54. Nick Fury's pillar of support is back. Rory propped up a chair from the ruined laboratory and struggled to sit down. He could clearly feel an energy surging within him, but after several attempts, he couldn't control it. It seemed to have its own will. This feeling was extremely strange. After resting for a while and being able to move around, he got up and went to the refrigerated cabinet. Except for the 2 necessary serum samples, he destroyed everything else. Since the experiment had been successful, there was no need to keep them, including formatting all the experimental data on the computer. He then opened the sealed laboratory door and said to his research assistant outside, "Have someone come and clean it up, and send over a new batch of equipment." "Yes, Dr. Rory." The laboratory was quite dusty. Rory needed to breathe some fresh air and think about how to use cosmic energy. The training ground was not far from the experimental area. He could hear the whistles coming from there as soon as he stepped out of the laboratory building. The sky was blue, the clouds were white, and the sun was shining brightly. A truly beautiful day for Rory. Sitting on the grass, Rory raised his hand and clenched his fist. His strength hadn't changed, but he could clearly feel an energy in his palm. After trying for a long time without success, Rory realized he needed a teacher, someone who could teach him how to use energy. Of the 10 Eternals, Faustus, residing in Chicago, was the easiest to find, but Faustus had been demolished. Their leader, Ajak, was relatively friendly and currently lived in the wilderness of South Dakota, but finding her would require some effort. Tina and Gilgamesh lived in Australia, also difficult to find, and since they were together, even if found, they might not be able to defeat them. The 3 easiest Eternals to find were Golden Fruit in Bombay, Bollywood, and Circe and the Elf in the London Museum. Rory disliked Bombay and didn't want to go, finding Circe might attract a fake Superman, Icarus. After analyzing everything, finding Ajak seemed the most reliable option. Ajak's combat ability was practically zero. Even if he attacked, Rory wouldn't be afraid. Having made up his mind, Rory immediately called Ross. Nick Fury, emerging from his office, stopped Kate, the second Hawkeye, who was on her way to the training grounds. "Kate," he asked, "have you seen Clint?" Kate shook her head. "No, I haven't seen him for days." "Has he contacted you?" Kate shook her head again. Nick Fury rubbed his bald head, his head throbbing. The new Avengers trials were about to begin, and Clint Barton's disappearance was truly disheartening. Nick Fury didn't know what kind of blow Hawkeye Barton had suffered. Anyone else might have gone mad. In Barton's heart, Natasha had sacrificed herself for everyone, but Rory told him that he and Natasha had been deceived by that red-faced guy. Who could bear that? If they had known sooner, would Natasha have survived? Self-blame, regret, guilt, sadness, all sorts of negative emotions filled Barton's heart. He dared not return to the base, and even more afraid to see Natasha's sister, Yelena. Just as Nick Fury was pondering how to find Clint Barton, a golden light suddenly shone outside the base, trailing a long tail of flame as it hurtled towards it. Upon seeing the golden light, Nick Fury felt a wave of relief wash over him. This time it's safe. When the golden light appeared, SHIELD erupted in excitement. Almost everyone rushed out to catch a glimpse of Captain Marvel. The shimmering golden Carol Danvers slowly landed on the ground, and people immediately rushed forward for autographs. Clap clap clap. Nick Fury clapped his hands and walked over, shouting, "All right everyone, get back to your posts immediately. Don't make me say it twice." Nick Fury activated his interstellar pager, summoning Captain Marvel back from the distant reaches of space. Captain Marvel, Carol, walked up to Nick Fury and asked, "You didn't call me back just for autographs, did you? Let's talk inside." Nick Fury wasn't in the mood for jokes. After taking Carol back to his office, he immediately played a video of Rory and the Avengers battle in New York. After reading it, Captain Marvel Carol asked, "Where is he now?" "At a military base in the suburbs." "Hey Carol, don't be impulsive." Carol turned to go find Rory, but Nick Fury quickly stopped her, advising, "Listen, his current role is a research consultant at a military lab. If you make a move inside the military base, SHIELD and the Avengers will be held responsible." Carol, a former Air Force officer, knew this wasn't the time to act rashly. After a 2-second silence, she whispered, "I'm going to check on Steve and Sam. Let me know immediately if there's any news." Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief and immediately arranged for someone to take Carol to the burial site of Steve and Sam. Standing by the office window watching Carol leave in her car, Nick Fury immediately took out his phone and called Callison and Hill, demanding they expedite the investigation into the immortality potion. After returning from the cemetery, Carol visited her friend Maria, chatting until after 9 p.m. before transforming into golden light and flying into the night sky. Soon they flew over the military base outside New York, observed for a moment, and then headed straight for the only 2-story villa on the base. Rory sat in a cigar chair, jotting something down in his notebook. Suddenly, it brightened outside the window. Anyone unaware would have thought it was dawn. Rory's eyes narrowed cautiously. He put down his notebook, stood up, and, wearing slippers, pushed open the door to the villa. A man and a woman stood on the steps, the other floating 2 meters above the ground, staring at each other. "Are you Rory?" "Captain Marvel, Carol." Carol slowly floated a few meters away from Rory, looking down at him and saying, "If you know what's good for you, come back with me." Rory smiled and asked, "Do you dare to fight here?" The ability to fly countered all superpowers. If he encountered something he couldn't win, he could simply run away, making him completely invincible. Rory was incredibly envious. If Rory could fly, he could punch a hole in the earth. "Do you really want me to fight?" "You can try." Rory didn't believe Carol would actually fight. Carol was strong, but she had many concerns, and she wasn't someone who liked to cause trouble for her friends and family. Besides, Rory didn't think he was guaranteed to lose. What could truly restrain Rory wasn't fists, but magic. The two faced off for a moment. Carol had watched Rory's combat videos and knew he also possessed great power, so she had only come today to test him. If given the chance, she would still choose to fight, but seeing Rory now, Carol dismissed the idea. She then transformed into golden light and left the military base. Only after Carol disappeared did Rory turn and return to his room. Captain Marvel Carol had already returned to Earth. Rory didn't have much time left. Thank you to Reader for the donation. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, It means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 The weakling leader of the Eternal Race taught me internal kung fu. Ross quickly located Ajak. She hadn't hidden her real name and even possessed her own credit card, so her information was readily available. The photo was sent to Rory, who, after confirming it was accurate, immediately arranged for a military plane to fly her directly to South Dakota. Ajak lived alone on a rural farm in South Dakota, within a few kilometers. She had lived there for many years, spending her free time farming or reporting on Earth's situation to the six-tube god, Aristom. After the destruction of Master Shul, half of humanity disappeared, delaying the awakening of the Earth's incubation god, Shiamu. However, unexpectedly, Shiamu was later rescued by the Avengers. As Shiamu's awakening time approached, Ajak grew increasingly uneasy. Late at night, Ajak lit the fireplace, preparing to contact the six-tube god, when suddenly there was a knock at the door. Ajak was clearly startled. She couldn't remember the last time a guest had visited. Opening the door, Ajak realized she didn't recognize the visitor and kindly asked, "Hello, what can I do for you? Are you Ms. Ajax?" It was Rory standing outside. Ajax nodded, staring at Rory with a questioning look. Rory smiled faintly. "My name is Rory. I'd like to ask you something. Would it be convenient for us to come in and talk?" Ajax nodded, invited Rory inside, poured her a cup of coffee in the kitchen, and then the two sat down in front of the fireplace. The firelight illuminated her profile. After pulling a blanket over her lap, she casually asked, "Are you a new resident in this neighborhood?" "No, I'm from New York." Ajax's expression changed. She had assumed Rory was from the neighborhood, but it turned out she had traveled a long way specifically for her. She rarely interacted with humans and certainly didn't have any friends in New York. She immediately inquired about Rory's purpose. "You came here specifically to see me? We don't seem to know each other." Rory's smile remained unchanged. "I only came for one thing, to learn about the Eternals and cosmic energy." The moment the words Eternals were uttered, Ajak's eyes immediately turned wary. Rory continued, "Don't be nervous. The Eternals have a long history, and you people aren't exactly discreet. It'll be easy to find clues." Ajak coldly replied, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. If there's nothing else, please leave immediately." After dealing with the aberrants, the Eternals reached a consensus not to interfere in human society. She would never reveal any secrets about the Eternals to a human. Rory had traveled a long way to get here, so naturally, she wouldn't be dismissed by Ajak's few words. She remained seated, chuckling, "No one can make me leave here until I get what I want." "What do you want?" Although Ajak was the leader of the 10 Eternals, her superpower was healing. Her combat strength was actually the lowest among the 10. She couldn't even defeat some ordinary human superpowered individuals. Ajak secretly took out his phone and dialed a number under the blanket, but it showed no signal. He tried several times without success. Rory, looking calmly at the campfire in the fireplace, said, "Don't waste your time. I have a signal jammer on me. No electronic signal can get through. Who are you? What do you want?" Seeing the call go through, Ajak simply took the phone out and threw it aside. Rory stopped beating around the bush and said directly, "I just want to know how to use cosmic energy. I can clearly feel the energy within my body, but I can't mobilize it. If you tell me how to use it, I'll leave immediately." Ajak seemed to have heard something out of the blue, firmly shaking his head. "Impossible. Cosmic energy is a power bestowed upon the Eternals by the gods. Humans cannot mobilize it. To be precise, humans cannot even feel cosmic energy." At the beginning of the universe, 6 infinity stones were born, representing the most primordial energy of the universe. The Celestials existed even before the universe, and they learned to use the energy after the universe's formation. They used this energy to create galaxies, the sun, and life, and then used life to nurture new gods. Only life forms modified by the Celestials can use cosmic energy, because cosmic energy and life energy cannot coexist within an individual. Otherwise, a new Celestial could not be born. This is the operating rule of the Celestials' energy interaction. Rory shook his head. "To be precise, I am no longer human. Like you, I have more eternal genes within me, which is why I traveled so far to find you." "You're an Eternal?" Ajak was astonished and immediately reached out to grasp Rory's hand. a surge of energy flowing from her body into Rory's. The probe indeed surprised Ajak. You mean you were originally human, and later became an eternal? That's right, so would you be willing to teach me how to use this energy? Rory didn't know what he was. He had ordinary human genes, then his genetic code was reprogrammed through serum, using genes from the Titans, a branch of the eternal race, to replace his own. Then, celestial genes were injected into his bone marrow, causing cosmic energy to appear within him as well. Human genes, Titan eternal branch genes, and celestial modified genes, these three combined to create the Rory we know today. Ajak lacked the specialized equipment to analyze Rory's genetic sequence, but she could sense the cosmic energy within him, thus acknowledging his eternal status. After a moment of shock, Ajak asked, "Can you tell me how you?" "Thanos, I used Thanos' blood to create a serum to enhance myself." Ajak nodded with an "I knew it" expression, no wonder. Having explained, Ajak then discussed the use of cosmic energy with Rory. The body is the carrier of cosmic energy. This energy is like a program. The user needs to write it themselves to gain different superpowers. Write it? How? Rory was completely confused. Ajak smiled slightly. You need to feel and experience the flow of energy, then guide it to change according to your thoughts. Rory's first thought was to use cosmic energy to fly. With his current physical abilities, if he could fly, he would be virtually invincible. Of the known flying superheroes, Captain Marvel flies by jetting energy, Thor uses Stormbreaker, and Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange use dimensional magic to control their flight. This is completely different from the cosmic energy circulation model described by Axe. Rory closed his eyes, carefully sensing the flow of cosmic energy. As soon as he felt it, this energy immediately appeared in his blood, spreading throughout his body and flowing with his blood, but it was uncontrollable. With his eyes closed, Rory couldn't see the changes happening to his body. He was now radiating a faint golden light. After a moment, the golden light began to converge in Rory's palms, forming two spheres of light. Chapter 56 It glowed, a beautiful golden light. Under Ajak's guidance, Rory slowly mobilized the cosmic energy within his body. Opening his eyes, the two golden orbs of light gathered in his hands immediately began to change. First, they transformed into a dagger, then slowly lengthened into rapier. The rapier continued to lengthen and widen, and by combining the energy from both hands, it transformed into a large golden sword, resembling a guillotine. Intrigued, Rory simply swung it lightly, instantly cleaving the coffee table in front of him, base and all, in two. Similar to Tina's ability, both are superpowers with strong combat capabilities. Rory was stunned upon hearing this. He didn't want a weapon transforming superpower, he wanted flight. Instantly retracting the conjured golden weapon, he hurriedly asked, "How do I fly using cosmic energy?" Ajak shook his head. "I only know how cosmic energy works." "Wow? Conjuring weapons was useless. You could easily steal some vibranium and forge a weapon." What he wanted was to fly. Rory stayed there for 2 days before returning to the military base. Over the past 2 days, Ajak told him about the history of the Eternals, including stories from other planets in the universe. Rory had considered changing Ajak's fate, but after careful consideration, he ultimately abandoned the idea. Ajak wanted to save Earth, seeking a way to achieve the best of both worlds without affecting Shyama's awakening. However, such a solution was impossible. If Shyama awakened, Earth would be destroyed. Between the awakening of the Celestials and saving Earth, Ajak would undoubtedly choose the Celestials' awakening, as she had made a similar choice before. Ajak was the only one who knew the truth. If she wanted to save Earth, she wouldn't be hesitating now. Therefore, she had to die, and she had to die at the hands of the knockoff Superman Icarus. Only then would Cersei stand on humanity's side and save Earth. Rory also mastered the use of cosmic energy during these 2 days. He could conjure various weapons with a wave of his hand. These weapons, created from cosmic energy, were extremely powerful, even surpassing vibranium, and incredibly sharp. The golden weapon looked quite nice, and with practice, Rory would add patterns or runes to it, making it look even more sophisticated. 3 days after Rory left, another visitor arrived at Ajak's house. It was Icarus, a knockoff superhuman and one of the Eternals, possessing flight abilities, the ability to fire beams of cosmic energy from his eyes, and superhuman strength and endurance, the strongest fighter among the Eternals. He took Ajak to a place where abominations, who had been exterminated thousands of years ago, had appeared. Ajak then realized that Icarus had brought her there to kill her. The reason was simple: Icarus was loyal to the Celestials and would not allow anyone to obstruct divine intervention, not even a fellow Eternal. Their ideologies clashed, and the extreme-minded Icarus chose the most direct way to resolve the problem. Instead of killing her himself, Icarus threw magic to the abominations and watched helplessly as she was killed. On the return flight, Rory continued to sense the cosmic energy within his body, wanting to see if he could develop other superpowers. According to Ajax's explanation, cosmic energy is omnipresent, and the Eternals who can use it are merely a medium, transforming invisible cosmic energy into visible and usable form. Halfway through their journey, just as they were about to enter Ohio, the aircraft suddenly experienced a violent jolt and began to descend uncontrollably towards the ground. Alarms blared incessantly inside the cabin, and the pilot repeatedly called ground control. Just as the aircraft was about to crash, its speed suddenly slowed, finally landing lightly on a patch of overgrown grass. Bang! Clang! The cabin door suddenly burst open, snapped in two, and flew dozens of meters away with a whoosh. Then, a woman radiating golden light floated in from the doorway. Captain Marvel Carol turned to look at Rory, then floated in front of him, saying, "This isn't a military base anymore. Let's see what you can do this time." Rory's lips curled up. To be precise, the aircraft is also military territory. "Congratulations, Carol, you've successfully caused trouble for your friend." Rory unfastened his seatbelt and stood in front of Carol, his smile undiminished, continuing, "There's one more thing I need to correct. I've never been afraid of you from beginning to end, so please don't misunderstand." Carol frowned, snorted coldly, and raised her hand to grab Rory. Rory was incredibly fast, so fast that even Carol didn't have time to react before Rory punched her in the chest. Boom! While Rory was still in his punching stance, the punch Carol was already flying through the cockpit's windshield. Carol had a certain level of fighting skill, and with a boost from her superpowers, her defense was also very strong. She also possessed powerful strength and energy attack methods, but her physical speed and reflexes were really quite average. Bang! Rory leaped up, crashing through the cockpit and jumping outside. Carol had already stood up. Seeing Rory emerge from the military aircraft, golden light emanated from Carol's body again as she flew close to the ground, rapidly approaching Rory. Rory calmly stood still. Just as Carol was about to reach him, a gleaming golden greatsword suddenly appeared in Rory's hand. Boom! Carol was fast, but fast too. Rory's sword sent her flying, carving a long furrow in the ground. Rory scoffed, "That's it?" Carol, bewildered, got up, finding Rory's hand empty. Despite her earlier disbelief, but now more cautious, Carol charged at Rory again. Whoosh! The greatsword reappeared in Rory's hand. As Carol charged at Rory, sword in hand, also charged at Carol. Clang! This time, prepared, Carol blocked the giant sword with her arm, while her other hand aimed at Rory, unleashing an energy wave. Just as the energy wave lit up, a massive golden square shield instantly appeared in Rory's other hand. Poof! The energy wave collided with a golden shield and dissipated instantly, leaving only scattered energy ripples. "Carol, why do you think you can defeat me alone?" Snap! Rory clasped his hands together, two streams of cosmic energy appearing and merging simultaneously, conjuring a supergiant sword with a blade over 2 meters long. Carol retreated rapidly, but Rory was faster, sprinting after her. With each step, the distance between them remained constant. Boom! The giant sword crashed down, slamming the flying Carol to the ground. Not content with just one strike, Rory raised his hand and continued his relentless assault. Boom! Boom! Carol tried to run, but each time she was pinned down by the giant sword. After several heavy blows, the energy around her flickered, and Rory smashed a crater more than a meter deep into her body with a giant sword. Soil flew everywhere, and Carol lay sprawled in the crater. Rory stood at the edge of the crater and smiled faintly. "You're not so good either." Although Rory's physical body hadn't become stronger after fusing with his celestial genes, he gained more offensive methods. He was no longer a brute who could only rely on his fists. His offense and defense had become much more agile. Captain Marvel Carol was in excruciating pain, feeling like her body was falling apart. Just as Rory's giant sword was about to fall again, she gritted her teeth and unleashed a powerful energy shockwave. Although she couldn't repel Rory, she blocked the falling sword. Carol seized the opportunity to fly out of the crater, not daring to stop for even a second longer. and quickly flew high to escape the range of Rory's giant sword. Chapter 57: The Exchange of Power and Authority, Taking the First Steps to Dynasty. Rory, annoyed, looked up at the sky. "Carol, are you going to fight or not? If you don't come down, I'm leaving." "Captain Marvel," Carol sneered, "this time it's my turn." She immediately began circling above Rory's head, gathering energy in her hand before unleashing a powerful shot at him. Poof! Rory's greatsword transformed into a shield. Although this attack didn't harm him, it was incredibly frustrating. Unable to fly and lacking ranged attacks, he was left only to be passively attacked. At that moment, the soldiers in the military aircraft contacted the base and reinforcements would arrive soon. Several other soldiers, rifles in hand, stepped out of the aircraft, aimed at Carol, and shouted, "Madam, please stop. Although you are a superhero, Dr. Rory is a military researcher. If you don't stop." Carol was currently engrossed in her attack, unleashing wave after wave of energy waves upon Rory's energy shield, but upon hearing the soldier's warning, she suddenly froze in midair. She had once been a member of the military, but was later taken to an alien planet by the Kree and trained as a warrior, even fighting Thanos to save the universe. Now, however, military soldiers were pointing guns at her, giving her the illusion that she was the villain. The next second, Rory suddenly leaped into the air, swinging his greatsword at the stunned Captain Marvel, Carol. On the ground, she was no match for Rory, but the sky was her domain. She easily dodged his attack, not pursuing him, but watching him land, coldly saying, "Let's see how long you can be so smug." Then she turned and flew away. After the exchange, Carol knew she couldn't defeat Rory. Energy shockwaves were ineffective against him, and she was no match for him on the ground. Continuing would only be a waste of time. Most importantly, the fact that ordinary soldiers were pointing guns at her almost broke Carol's composure. Watching Carol disappear in a golden light, Rory sheathed his phasing greatsword and returned to the military aircraft. "Have you made contact with the base?" "We've made contact with the base. They should be here in about 10 minutes. The base will first send a plane to pick up Rory, and then send engineering vehicles to deal with the military aircraft that landed in the field. The military will definitely hold Carol responsible for this." Secretary of State Ross might even use this as an opportunity to hold a press conference and hearing, demanding that Carol sign the Sokovia Agreement. If she doesn't sign, the pressure will go to SHIELD, since SHIELD sued Ross in Congress for endangering national security. Now that Captain Marvel attacked a military aircraft, she will naturally be accused of the same crime. Rory returned to the military base on another military aircraft, and the first thing he did after getting off the plane was to go to the underground laboratory. Mr. Immortal Hollis was playing cards with several laboratory assistants. Upon seeing Rory return, he immediately dropped his deck of cards and asked, "Hey Mr. Rory, I thought you'd been arrested. I haven't seen you for days." Rory put on his white lab coat and said, "Why are you so concerned about me?" Mr. Hollis shrugged, "Without you, those soldiers wouldn't let me leave. You have no idea how tough life is here." Hollis just wanted to temporarily escape his wives, he wasn't really trying to abstain from sex. Having spent some time with Hollis, Rory knew his character well. He chuckled and walked into the experimental area. "Mr. Hollis, please be patient. There are still a few experiments to complete. I'll let you leave in a few days." The lab Rory had destroyed had been cleaned up, and all the equipment had been replaced. He took out a vibranium needle and drew some blood from himself, immediately beginning his observation experiment. Rory could now fully mobilize cosmic energy, and he wanted to know how this was related to his genes, perhaps finding a way to gain other superpowers. After observation, he discovered that the activity of his blood cells had increased significantly, and the cell membranes contained much more substances that could conduct cosmic energy. But the reason limiting Rory's use of cosmic energy wasn't in his blood. He tried firing energy beams through his eyes like Icarus, or energy projectiles through his hands like golden fruit, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't do it. What the hell is going on? Rory studied it for a long time but still couldn't figure it out. He didn't even know how cosmic energy worked, only that his body absorbed the surrounding cosmic energy to maintain its own energy supply. But that was all. He worked until late at night until his assistant came to find him. "Dr. Rory, Mr. Ross wants to see you." "Where is he?" "Waiting for you at your residence." Rory nodded, took off his gloves and mask, and hung his white lab coat on a hanger after leaving the testing area. Back at his residence, Secretary of State Ross was sitting in front of the fireplace, smoking a cigar and holding a whiskey in one hand. Rory went to the bar, poured himself a glass of water, and sat down opposite Ross. The serum is complete and ready for testing at any time. Ross waved his hand with a smile. I didn't come here today for that. I just wanted to ask you about your relationship with Captain Marvel, Carol. Ross had already learned about the battle between Rory and Carol from the military reports, and Carol still retained their military status. Carol's disappearance was initially ruled a death sentence, and her file was sealed, still indicating she was a registered soldier. No one expected her to survive. When Carol reappeared, she was an extremely powerful superhuman, so the military maintained this relationship until now. Rory said indifferently, what else could it be? Of course, it's to capture me and avenge Steve. Ross's opinion of Steve was no less than his opinion of Hulk. Don't forget, it was Steve who spearheaded the opposition to the Sokovia Accords he proposed. But she failed. I didn't expect even Captain Marvel to be no match for you. Ross's eyes gleamed. Based on this achievement alone, Ross was convinced that his cooperation with Rory was the right one. Ross now also had a plan to form a superhuman group, centered around Rory, to replace the Avengers and SHIELD. Rory, unaware of Ross's intentions, simply stated calmly, it's not a win, at best a draw. Carol could fly, but he couldn't, a fact Rory found frustrating. Secretary Ross, puffing on his cigar, chuckled, leave this to me. I'll use the nation's name to restrict Captain Marvel's actions, and incidentally, let SHIELD experience what it's like to be a defendant. Ross then added, I've submitted my application as an independent presidential candidate, and I'll begin roadshows and debates next month. Members of the Immortal Society will help me raise funds and votes. Rory, completely uninterested in politics, yawned and said, don't tell me about that. Just do what you promised. What I mean is, when will the second batch of immortality serum be completed? The first batch of immortality serum injections had been successfully administered for some time, with no adverse reactions reported. Those who received the injections showed significant improvement in their health, immediately piquing the interest of those who were still observing. Rory thought for a moment and said, there's still a little raw material left, enough for a maximum of 10 people, but you need to send me blood samples from the users for testing first. Although Ross didn't understand why Rory needed to test the blood samples first, he didn't ask further and agreed. P.S. It's the last day of February, brothers. Don't hoard your tickets, hand them all over. Chapter 58 The New Avengers prepare for the Destroyer. Waking up early, Rory stepped outside and conjured a giant golden sword with his hands clasped together. He concentrated all his energy in his hands, trying to increase his utilization of cosmic energy through training. But no matter how hard he tried, the sword he conjured could only reach a maximum length of about 2.5 meters. This was the limit of cosmic energy, not Rory's limit. Rory was like a data cable. The amount of data he could transmit didn't depend on him, but on the amount of cosmic energy entering his body. Something seemed to be limiting the speed at which Rory absorbed energy, perhaps a limitation left by the Celestials when they modified the Eternals. At the new Avengers base, a charred Nick Fury glared at Captain Marvel, Carol, who remained indifferent. Just 10 minutes earlier, Nick Fury had received documents from a hearing demanding that Carol and SHIELD provide a reasonable explanation for the attack on the military aircraft. Furthermore, Carol, who retained her military service, had received a summons from a military court. They had originally had a chance to deal with Secretary Ross, but now, because of this incident, SHIELD and the Avengers were immediately put on the defensive. Carol, don't go anywhere for the time being. I'll handle the rest. Also, from now on, I'll decide when to take action. Carol pursed her lips and remained silent. Whoosh, a portal suddenly lit up in Nick Fury's office, and the sorcerer surnamed Wang helped the weakened Doctor Strange through it into the office. Doctor Strange? What's going on? After the Battle of New York, Strange and Wanda both fell into a dimensional rift and hadn't been seen since. Nick Fury hadn't expected him to suddenly appear here. He immediately stepped forward to inquire about the situation. Are you injured? How is Wanda? Captain Marvel was back. If they joined Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch, they could definitely take down Rory in one fell swoop. Strange shook his head. I was rescued by another Sorcerer Supreme. Wanda is still trapped in the dimensional space. He and Wanda had fought a battle. Neither of them were advanced sorcerers yet, so they were evenly matched. After the two fell into the dimensional rift, they intended to return immediately, but due to the influence of dimensional power, Strange was unable to reopen the dimensional rift. Fortunately, he could communicate with the Sorcerer Supreme of other worlds, thus narrowly escaping death, but Wanda remained there. Nick Fury hurriedly asked, "Then why didn't you bring Wanda back?" "I can't do it temporarily due to the influence of dimensional power. I need to rest for a while," Strange continued. "I came here to remind you of something. Rory is the destroyer of worlds. Once he grows up, he will be even more terrifying than Thanos. We must capture him as soon as possible." Captain Marvel asked curiously, "What does destroyer of worlds mean?" The sorcerer surnamed Wang, supporting Strange, explained, "It's the term used in the sorcerer world. These people possess the ability to interfere with timelines. Once the course of a timeline changes, it will lead to the destruction of the entire timeline." Strange added, "Protecting the timeline is the responsibility of the Guardian Sorcerers, but I lost the Eye of Agamotto and cannot deal with the Destroyer of Worlds alone. Therefore, we must gather more people to deal with him, the sooner the better." Nick Fury and Captain Marvel both understood. Rory's existence disrupts the world's normal operation. If we don't deal with him quickly, it could cause a major problem. Nick Fury asked, "Dr. Strange, can't you and Carol handle him together?" Before Strange could speak, Carol interjected, "I just fought him. To be honest, he's very strong, especially his ability to conjure weapons. I can withstand a few hits, but a few more and even I would get injured." "He's gotten stronger again?" Strange asked, "And what do you mean by conjuring weapons?" After Carol explained, a look of surprise appeared on Strange's face. "You mean the golden light that can change shape at will?" Carol nodded. "We're in big trouble. The spells used by the Guardian Sorcerer are also a type of cosmic energy." After Carol's description, Strange knew that Rory was also manipulating cosmic energy. The original Rory was almost invincible physically, even capable of withstanding Dr. Banner's attacks. If you were to add the manipulation of cosmic energy, even if he and Captain Marvel teamed up, they probably still wouldn't be a match for Rory. Strange said helplessly, "We need more help, and we need to be quick." Everyone realized the seriousness of the situation. Nick Fury immediately summoned Maria Hill and ordered, "Hill, go find Dr. Banner right now." "I'll go find Thor," Carol added. Nick Fury nodded, "Act immediately. I'll contact the other superpowered individuals. The second hearing is in 3 days. If things don't go smoothly, we can't worry about that now," Strange said firmly. The problem of the Destroyer was a headache for all the Sorcerers Supreme. Although the Destroyer would disappear along with the timeline after its destruction, no one wanted their world to be destroyed. And what troubled Strange most wasn't Rory's strength, but rather that Rory had used time travel. If they couldn't handle Rory and he escaped to another timeline, the consequences would be even more severe. In a short time, SHIELD assembled a large number of superpowered individuals. Now, all they need to do is wait for Carol to find Thor, and for Strange to recover, then they can immediately take action against Rory. Rory is unaware that SHIELD is gathering forces to deal with him. He's currently undergoing mass testing of the super soldier serum. Ross's idea is to create a super soldier squad to replace the Avengers in protecting the world. Rory feels he can't handle the Avengers alone, he needs a large army. So the two headed off and immediately began selecting members for the super soldier program from the military. There are only 2 requirements, loyalty and absolute loyalty. Character and ability are completely irrelevant to Rory. Ross uses the immortality serum to win over politicians, while Rory uses the super soldier serum to create an army. Upon leaving the lab, Rory immediately summoned Mr. Immortality, Hollis. "Mr. Hollis, I need half a brain. Please bear with me." Hollis. Rory's guess is that Mr. Immortality's superpowers stem from an entangled relationship between himself and cosmic energy. This can be seen as another manifestation of cosmic energy. As long as cosmic energy exists, he is immortal. The problem is that Rory has never been able to find the reason for Hollis's immortality, and today he suddenly had the urge to open Hollis's skull and take a look. Thanks to reader, Death God Li Meng, for the reward. Thanks to all the brothers for the recommendation tickets and monthly tickets, and thanks to all the brothers for the suggestions and likes. Chapter 59: A heretic who wants to resurrect Steve? Angus, a lab assistant and one of Secretary of State Ross's most trusted men, wasn't involved in the super soldier experiments but was instead transferred to Captain America's research group. Angus, Are you sure you've learned Laurie's skills? Angus nodded confidently. Yes, Mr. Ross. Although I don't have Laurie's experimental data, I've replicated his experimental process, and in the process, I've discovered many novel things. In an office at the military base, Ross sat behind his desk, looking at Angus standing opposite him. His original intention in placing Angus in Laurie's lab was to supervise, but Angus had his own ideas. He even boldly replicated Laurie's experiments. Although some unknown experimental materials were missing, through interpreting the process, Angus confidently believed he had mastered Laurie's skills. Angus was not only a mad scientist but also a Captain America fan. Therefore, he proposed to Ross that he take sole charge of the experimental group. Ross frowned and asked, "Why do you insist on transferring to the Captain America research group?" Dr. Rory created a gene cell activation technology. "I want to try and see if I can resurrect Captain America. If I can, it will be the greatest advancement humanity has ever made." Resurrection is a pseudo proposition, taboo in the biological field, yet some researchers still believe they can break the shackles of life, some even more fanciful, wanting to proclaim themselves gods. Mr. Immortal could be resurrected because he had superpowers. Even the sufficiently fanatical Rory only conducted a simple study, and after finding it impossible, he had no intention of continuing the research. Rory simply wanted to possess this ability, not to resurrect the dead. In the words of biologists, we study life, but we do not desecrate life. Angus clearly did not abide by the order of life. Ross didn't understand these things, and after hesitating for a long time, he agreed, "Okay, you're in charge of the Captain America research group. 6 months. If you don't produce research results within 6 months, you're fired." A separate area within the military base was designated for the manufacture and training of super soldiers. In the training ground, Rory was conducting physical tests on a newly minted super soldier. The 17th super soldier's experiment is complete. Physical test data is normal, and the strength increase of 137% meets the standard. After recording the data, Rory beckoned to super soldier number 17. "Eat according to the dietary standards. Do not consume any foods containing hormones until your body stabilizes. From now on, come to the lab on time every day for blood tests. I need to know your daily physical changes." "Yes, sir." So far, Rory has created 17 super soldiers. Initially, some newly formed super soldiers were disobedient, but after being severely reprimanded by Rory, they all became obedient. These soldiers are stronger than ordinary people, and even the most elite special forces are no match for them, but they are no match for Rory. "Alright, go train. Remember to rest and don't overexert your body." "Yes, sir." After saluting, super soldier number 17 turned and jogged back to the training ground to join the other 16 super soldiers in training. Rory returned to the lab from the training ground and entered the genetic data of the 17 super soldiers into the computer for comparison. The super serum modified by Rory was much more mature and stable than the one created by Dr. Awakens. The only drawback was that, limited by the strength of human genes, the enhanced super soldiers barely reached B level and could not be further improved. The next day, just as Rory was preparing to begin the 18th super soldier enhancement experiment, Ross came again. "The hearing is over. Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, has been restricted from using her superpowers, and SHIELD has been ordered by Congress to accept an investigation." Ross was in a good mood. This crackdown on superpowered individuals had given him a huge boost in public opinion, and his online support for the presidential candidate had skyrocketed. "By the way, there's another piece of news I think I need to tell you. James Rhodes is missing." Rory asked suspiciously, "Is he still alive?" Rory knew how hard his kick had been. An ordinary person would have been dead long ago. Actually, no. Rhodes was taken to the hospital with a broken cervical spine, only his head and right hand were still functional. But Rhodes suddenly disappeared from the sanatorium yesterday. After a few seconds of contemplation, Rory muttered, "Damn, could it be Skrulls?" "What did you say?" Ross didn't hear him clearly and pressed for an answer. "I said." Just as Rory began to speak, a loud bang came from above. Both Rory and Ross in the underground laboratory felt a noticeable tremor beneath their feet, followed by a sudden power outage, plunging the entire laboratory into darkness. Beep beep beep, the alarm and red warning lights simultaneously went into action. "What's going on? Why is there an earthquake?" General Ross cried out in alarm, cowering in a corner. Rory calmly replied, "It's not an earthquake, someone broke in." "You mean the Avengers?" With a whoosh, Rory conjured a sword and slashed the laboratory's metal door in two. With a power outage, the elevator was unusable. Rory pried open the elevator doors and leaped up the shaft, jumping twice to reach the ground. Stepping out of the elevator, a massive green figure was rampaging through the laboratory. It wasn't harming ordinary people, but was fighting several super soldiers. Banner. Rory clasped his hands together, conjuring a golden greatsword, and swung it down with all his might. The golden greatsword was so enormous that it pierced through the floorboards above, leaving a gash, before striking Banner's backyard. Boom! Banner's massive body was cleaved out of the laboratory building, a spray of green blood splattering onto Ross, who was crawling out behind Rory. Roar! Dr. Banner got up and roared outside the building, but showed no intention of entering. Rory, carrying the greatsword, stepped out of the building and froze at the sight outside. Familiar faces appeared before him, each wearing Avengers combat suits, clearly prepared. Armored vehicles and tanks drove in from the other side of the base, surrounding the superheroes, soldiers standing ready with guns drawn. Two helicopters circled overhead, their machine guns also aimed at the new Avengers. "Rory, surrender. I'll surrender your ass." A fight broke out without a word. After Rory cursed, Bruce Banner charged forward first, Rory's greatsword slashing mercilessly. Banner knew the power of the golden greatsword and dared not take it head-on. As he swung his sword again, Captain Marvel quickly closed in, simultaneously releasing energy blasts with both hands, knocking Rory back 2 steps. The moment this happened, the soldiers on the other side pulled the trigger without hesitation. Gunfire erupted, the machine guns on the helicopters spraying bullets wildly, and the new Avengers immediately scattered to fight individually. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, tried to use his web shooters to bind the soldiers, controlling them without harming them. Jessica Jones and Luke Cage of the Defenders were firing wildly at the armored vehicles and tanks. Suddenly, War Machine flew in from a distance, smashing the tail rotor blades of both helicopters, forcing them to make an emergency landing. The Avengers only wanted to take Rory away, so they had no intention of harming the ordinary soldiers. Chapter 60, The Second Battle Between Rory and the Avengers. Whoosh, rat-a-tat-tat-tat. 17 Gatling guns lined up, their dense bullets weaving a massive net as they swarmed towards the Avengers. The appearance of these 17 super soldiers immediately put immense pressure on the Avengers. Peter Parker. Upon hearing this, Peter Parker immediately fired a web that ensnared the War Machine in the sky, then swung behind the 17 super soldiers. Whoosh! The web had just wrapped around one of their wrists when it broke free, and a punch landed on Peter Parker's face. Ouch! My nose! Members of the Defenders rushed to help, but the 17 super soldiers, discarding their empty Gatling guns, charged forward. In just one exchange, the 4-man Defenders were pinned to the ground and thoroughly humiliated. Damn it! They're not ordinary people, come help. Black Panther and Winter Soldier, arriving after being alerted, joined the fray, but they still couldn't completely suppress the 17 super soldiers. They weren't just enhanced humans, they were military soldiers, rigorously trained. While individually they might not be stronger than the Avengers, their sheer numbers were overwhelming. A barrage of punches would easily overwhelm most superheroes. Meanwhile, Rhodes, wielding his giant sword, relentlessly attacked Captain Marvel and Hulk. The Hulk threw a jeep, which Rhodes sliced in two with his sword. The two halves slid several meters across the concrete, sparks flying and igniting spilled gasoline, exploding with a loud boom behind Rhodes. Rhodes' shadow swayed gently on the ground in the flames. Captain Marvel flew in and fired another energy blast. Rhodes instantly conjured a shield to block it, then shrank the shield, gathering the excess energy in his other hand to form a one-handed sword. While fending off Captain Marvel's attacks, he pursued Banner. Banner was indeed tough, but it depended on who he was fighting. Weapons conjured from cosmic energy weren't just about sharpness, cutting ordinary metal was as easy as slicing tofu. To counter them, one needed an equal amount of energy. Captain Marvel flew through the air, pulling and attacking, while Rory was harassed and spun around in place. Roar! Taking advantage of Rory's back being turned, the Hulk, Bruce Banner, charged forward savagely. Just as the Hulk was about to hit Rory, the wall of the experimental building suddenly burst open, and another Hulk rushed out amidst the flying bricks, grabbing the Hulk, Bruce Banner. The two giants rolled on the ground a few times, then immediately started wrestling. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked. including Rory himself. Red Hulk? The Red Hulk and the Hulk, Bruce Banner, had no defense, exchanging blows with each punch. The Red Hulk was Ross. Earlier in the underground laboratory, Rory had come out first, and Ross, fearing damage to the enhancement serum, had taken the serum with him and climbed up the elevator shaft. As a result, the bottle containing the serum was accidentally broken, and shards cut Ross's arm, which happened to be splashed with Hulk's blood. The serum mixed with the green blood and merged into the wound on Ross's arm. The Red Hulk was born. The two giants clashed with resounding booms, while the others were held back by 17 super soldiers. Rory chuckled, brandishing his greatsword and charging at Captain Marvel again. His strike was swift and deadly. Carol didn't even have time to react before it struck her on the forehead. Thud. History repeated itself. Carol was once again slammed to the ground. A deep crater was smashed into the solid concrete, and with Rory's continued blows, cracks appeared and spread outwards. Come on, get up. Rory taunted, swinging his greatsword. Carol was dazed and disoriented, barely managing to defend herself even with the blinding golden light emanating from her body. Whoosh, 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 boom. A 7-colored rainbow beam descended from the sky, and a storm axe flew out from within, cleaving Rory, who was still hacking at Captain Marvel, several meters away. Oh, sorry, I'm a little late because of something. Are you all okay? Thor, the muscular god, emerged from the pillar of light on the rainbow bridge with Korg, the Thing. He thought he was being funny, but actually, no one paid him any attention because everyone was busy. Red Hulk lifted a plane and swatted the Hulk away. The enraged Hulk picked up a tank and threw it at Red Hulk, but instead of hitting Red Hulk, he crushed several ordinary soldiers. Thor asked in amazement, "Hey, is he Banner's cousin?" Carol rubbed her forehead, stood up, and pointed at Rory, saying, "That's Rory." Thor turned to look at Rory, who was also looking at Thor. Whoosh, Stormbreaker returned to Thor's hand, and he asked with a smile, "Are you planning to come with me now, or wait until I beat you up before taking you away?" Thor was the most powerful Avenger. His Stormbreaker could even cleave through the energy attacks of the 6 Infinity Stones before striking Thanos hard. Later, he even chopped off Thanos' head. Currently, Thor's Stormbreaker is the only weapon that can pose a threat to Ronnie. But how could Ronnie admit defeat? He's been fearless all alone. With a cold laugh, he said, "Perhaps I can keep you here." Thor's smile vanished. He weighed the Stormbreaker in his hand, leaped high in his signature move, and then brought it down with tremendous force towards Ronnie. Boom! The axe missed its mark, creating a deep crater in the ground. He then adjusted his direction and swept it horizontally towards Ronnie. Clang! Ronnie's greatsword clashed with the Stormbreaker. The two exchanged more than a dozen blows. The more they fought, the more surprised Thor became. This kid, who seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, could actually fight him to a standstill. The longer the fight dragged on, the worse it would be for the Avengers. More and more soldiers arrived to provide support. Artillery and tanks gathered on the perimeter, all their cannons aimed at the battlefield. 2 heavily armed fighter jets swept across the sky, ready to fire at any moment. Suddenly, a portal lit up, and Doctor Strange, his magic restored, floated out. He immediately used the Isaac form, cloning technique, creating dozens of clones above Rory's head, and dozens of ruined whips lashed out at him. He had used the same technique against Thanos. Rory was instantly bound and unable to move. "Thor! Quick!" Strange roared. Thor, wielding his axe, charged at Rory. The axe blade gleamed coldly, slicing through the air, aiming to cleave Rory in two. Unable to break free from the ruined whip's control, Rory's eyes widened as he mobilized all the cosmic energy within him. With a whoosh, his greatsword vanished, and golden cosmic energy transformed into shimmering armor, enveloping Rory. The armor, formed from golden rays, shone exceptionally brightly in the night, illuminating the surrounding space. The Stormbreaker struck the golden armor with a clang, the blue light of lightning and golden cosmic energy intertwining, instantly unleashing a burst of light. Thor was thrown back, and Strange, who was pulling on the rune whip, stumbled. Rory, having temporarily regained some mobility, conjured 2 daggers and swiftly severed the rune whip binding him. "How?" Rory chuckled, then immediately shut his mouth. He had wanted to say, "You should cut off my head," but then thought better of it. Some things were truly best left unsaid. His greatsword reappeared, and with a single strike, he cleaved the stunned Thor away. The flying Thor collided with Strange's real body, and his numerous clones vanished instantly. Boom. Boom. The outer army had now formed an encirclement and was gradually advancing, gunfire and artillery fire resounding incessantly. Suddenly, a figure flew past Rory. His nerves on edge, Rory instinctively swung his greatsword, cleaving the figure in two. Thud. Yelena, the second Black Widow, was thrown by a super soldier, but unexpectedly, she ran right into Rory's blade, twitched a few times, and instantly died. Rory was stunned for a moment. He thought it was a weapon thrown at him, but it turned out to be a person. Chapter 61 Fate must be in your own hands. Rory didn't take the second-generation Black Widow, now severed in two, seriously. He pressed his advantage, wielding his greatsword and slashing at Thor. Clang. The thing, Korg, blocked the attack with his club, then cleaved in two. Rory countered with an elbow strike, knocking Korg down and sending a shower of pebbles flying. His next strike, aimed at crushing Korg, was blocked by Stormbreaker. Thor, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, and Doctor Strange stood opposite Rory. Strange glanced at the group fighting 17 super soldiers and said, "Rory, make them stop. You've lost." Whoosh. Shield in one hand, sword in the other, Rory assumed a fighting stance. Life is never about winning or losing. No one can control my destiny. No one. Rory turned, pointing his sword, and roared, "Kill them all. Leave no one alive." Although he had a one-night stand with Jessica Jones, in a confrontation, any mercy would be irresponsible towards his own life. Roar. 17 super soldiers unleashed their full power. 2 fought Black Panther, 2 entangled Spider-Man, 1 dealt with a Winter Soldier, and the rest launched a frenzied attack on the Defenders Quartet. Daredevil blocked the attacks with his rollerblades, but a dagger suddenly appeared from his side, slicing through his ribs, followed by another stab to his abdomen and arm. The wounded Daredevil was even less able to withstand the super soldier's onslaught, and in the blink of an eye, he was stabbed several more times, collapsing to the ground, a pool of crimson blood flowing out. Matt. Iron Fist Danny Land charged up a punch, sending the super soldier who was lunging at Jessica Jones flying. Just as he was about to help Daredevil, he was surrounded by 3 super soldiers who pinned him to the ground and beat him mercilessly. Crack. His right hand, which was releasing the energy punch, was broken and bent backward. Just as the super soldiers were about to plunge a tactical dagger into Danny Land's heart, the invulnerable Luke Cage charged in with his bare body, knocking the super soldiers aside and helping Danny Land to his feet. More super soldiers surged forward, grabbing Luke Cage's hands and feet and dragging him to the tank, pinning him under its tracks. Luke Cage struggled and screamed, but couldn't move the heavy tank pressing down on him. The next targets were Black Panther and the Winter Soldier. If this continued, all the superheroes would perish here. Strange immediately raised his hands and drew a portal, sending the 4 defenders, Black Panther, and the Winter Soldier away. Without their target, the 17 super soldiers turned to Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Oh my god. A web shot out, instantly moving away from the super soldiers. Halfway through the air, a portal appeared before him, and the next second, Spider-Man was out of the fray. Rory brandished his golden sword, "Go kill the Hulk too." The 17 super soldiers swarmed towards Bruce Banner, the Hulk, like a tidal wave. Already evenly matched with the Red Hulk, Banner was completely overwhelmed by the arrival of these super soldiers. Captain Marvel, Carol, tried to help, but Rory chased after her on the ground, yelling, "Don't even think about it." A golden shield blocked Captain Marvel's energy blast, and Rory thrust his sword directly at the Hulk. Rory couldn't handle those flying, so he dealt with those on the ground. Whoosh! A portal appeared, and Bruce Banner was also sent away by Strange. Roar! Red Hulk roared, arms outstretched. The others didn't know who Red Hulk was, but Rory knew perfectly well. The Hulk had become an obsession for Ross, and today he had finally won. Rory turned to face the 3 opposite him. Thor plus Doctor Strange plus Captain Marvel versus Rory plus Red Hulk plus 17 super soldiers. "Shoot that magician down," Rory ordered, and all the super soldiers simultaneously drew their sidearms and aimed at Strange. Thor and Captain Marvel could withstand missiles with their bare hands, but Strange couldn't. A sorcerer's body wasn't much different from an ordinary person's, being shot would kill him too. Startled, Strange immediately activated his energy shield. Several super soldiers went to retrieve Gatling guns, preparing to give Strange a taste of the most insane modern firepower. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, 2 support helicopters arrived and began strafing Strange and Captain Marvel in the air, while ground-based anti-aircraft guns opened fire. Fortunately, Captain Marvel protected Strange's back, otherwise, he would have been blasted to pieces. Enraged, Thor swung his Stormbreaker, wanting to destroy the planes in the sky and the group of super soldiers on the ground. Rory snorted coldly, grabbing his lightsaber and immediately charging forward. He blocked the axe with his shield and swung his lightsaber in a backhand strike. Clang. Rory finally understood Steve Rogers' joy. Having a shield was truly wonderful. Just as Rhodes and Thor were locked in fierce combat, Nick Fury's urgent voice suddenly came through the communicator, "Retreat immediately. Stop fighting. Now." But. No buts. We can't harm civilians, and we certainly can't harm soldiers. Retreat. That's an order. Rhodes had a new ally, and the other Avengers had already begun to withdraw from the battlefield. The remaining 3 Avengers were finding it difficult to deal with Rhodes. If they didn't want to accidentally harm others, they had no choice but to retreat. Captain Marvel looked at Strange and said, "There's no chance. Let's retreat." Although Strange was unwilling, he could only nod helplessly, and a portal appeared behind him, instantly disappearing. Carol transformed into golden light and soared into the sky, followed closely by Thor, who raised a Stormbreaker and flew away. A sudden battle had come to an end. The military base had been reduced to ruins, almost all of the destruction coming from the 2 giants. Red Hulk strode over to Rhodes' side, staring at him without saying a word. Rory put away the cosmic energy conjured weapon and asked, "Can't you turn back?" Red Hulk Ross exhaled a wave of heat and nodded. Although the military base's experimental building was in ruins, it didn't cause too much damage to the underground laboratory. Rory took Ross, who had transformed into Red Hulk, back to the underground laboratory. A blood sample revealed that Red Hulk's blood was golden, and like the Hulk, it contained gamma rays. Logically, Ross should have been transformed into Red Hulk by the boss, Samuel Stern, using gamma rays. Could Ross have been modified by the boss? But upon closer inspection, the timeline clearly didn't match, leaving Rory somewhat confused. After a series of tests and data analysis, Rory walked to Ross, who was squatting on the ground, and asked, "Have you seen someone named Samuel Stern before?" Ross was in great discomfort. The underground laboratory was low, he couldn't stand up and could only squat, and he couldn't even lift his head. Upon hearing Rory's question, Ross immediately shook his head repeatedly, "No." Rory had only asked casually, continuing, "I don't know why you became like this. I can give you an injection of an inhibitor to suppress the mutated genes in your body, which might restore you to your original state. However, there are certain risks involved. The choice is yours." The inhibitor was a serum drug extracted by Rory from mice. The mice did not receive any power enhancement after being injected with Thanos' serum, but their genes could suppress the genes of other organisms, making it a perfect candidate for an inhibitor. After thinking for a moment, Ross hummed, "Okay, go ahead and give it to me." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62: A fragmented Avengers team with no substance. This is a crucial period for Ross's presidential campaign. He certainly can't run for president disguised as Red Hulk. After much hesitation, Ross ultimately chose power. There are many superhumans, but only one president. Fortunately, no one knows that Red Hulk is Ross. Rory took out an inhibitor, placed it in a vibranium-made needle gun, and injected it into Ross's body at a relatively thin spot. Ugh! As soon as the drug entered his body, Ross felt a tingling, numb sensation all over his body. His red skin began to fade, slowly returning to his original skin color. His enormous body began to shrink, his bones metamorphosed, and his muscles atrophied, returning to human form a few seconds later. "I only have a white coat here, you can wear this for now." Ross, looking unusually tired after reverting to human form, put on the white coat Rory handed him and asked, "Will I suddenly transform again in the future? Is there a way for me to control my transformation?" Rory shook his head, "I don't know, you'll have to figure that out yourself. If you really can't, you can ask Bruce Banner. Here's one inhibitor left, take it with you, you can give yourself an injection if something unexpected happens." "Thank you." Power had been restored to the lab, and Rory and Ross took the elevator back to the ground. By this time, military troops had already arrived and were cleaning up the battlefield. This can't be left like this. Attacking a military base is a serious crime, even for superheroes. Ross said angrily. Rory instructed, don't target all the Avengers at once, you can start with a few weaker ones. As he spoke, he waved to a spot not far away, and 17 super soldiers immediately lined up and walked over. Snap, good morning, sir. Rory nodded. Number 4 and number 7, you two go back with Mr. Ross and are responsible for his safety. Yes, sir. The 17 super soldiers obeyed Rory's orders without question, causing Ross to frown slightly. Super soldiers admire strength, and these men hadn't fully grasped Rory's power before. Only after today did they realize just how strong he truly was. The 17 of them were already struggling against a few ordinary superheroes, while Rory could challenge the top Avengers single-handedly. Their combat prowess was on a completely different level. Rory then said to Ross, the rest can stay here for now. There are some experiments that require their cooperation. Remember to let me know when you're capturing the Avengers, and I'll bring men to help. Ross nodded. Okay, it would be best to enhance more super soldiers, so we won't be outmatched next time we face the Avengers. Rory just smiled and didn't say anything. The Avengers' attack on and destruction of a military base was no different from terrorism and a provocation against the authorities. The Avengers will definitely face official targeting and even arrests next. The car that was supposed to pick up Ross arrived, and before leaving, Ross suddenly turned back and said, Rhodes, I want to give the super soldier team a designation. What do you think of the name Night Legion? That's your right, Rhodes replied calmly. Night Legion? Who's the king? At SHIELD headquarters, the group that had just returned from the military base was already in an uproar. The first to fire was War Machine Rhodes, who should have been injured and hospitalized, confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Not only was he not crippled, but he recovered quickly and was even able to continue operating War Machine. Thor, I don't have a problem with you, but I think you're at least half responsible for this operation. Thor hated being blamed, and immediately retorted, you guys couldn't beat them, not me. If anyone's to take responsibility, I think you should look for the reasons within yourselves. But you were the one who was late, you can't deny that. Iron Fist Danny Rand, his broken arm in a cast, glared and shouted, didn't anyone figure out the enemy's strength before the operation? 17 super soldiers, and now Matt is dead, someone has to be held accountable. Of the 4 defenders, only Jessica Jones was in slightly better shape, the rest were in a sorry state. Especially Luke Cage, if it weren't for the portal that helped him escape, he might still be crushed by tanks. Don't make excuses for your weakness, it makes you look like cowards. Peter Parker chimed in, I felt like I was facing 17 captains. They were faster and more ruthless. Mr. Fury even told us not to hurt the soldiers, which was really difficult to do. That's right, Nick Fury should bear the main responsibility. Some idiot has to be held accountable for this failure. I don't want to lose my life on the next mission. Yelena is dead. Let's think about how to explain this to Clint Barton, Dr. Banner said helplessly. And that Red Hulk, he tied up Dr. Banner, causing us to lose a lot of combat power. Otherwise, we might have had a chance. Without Hawkeye Barton, that lucky charm, it's really hard to win a team battle. The atmosphere in the meeting room was oppressive. Everyone was looking for excuses for the failure of this mission, and the loss of 2 superheroes was considerable. Nick Fury remained silent with a dark face throughout, while Doctor Strange sighed heavily. Maria Hill whispered, this reminds me of when the Avengers were first formed, but back then we had Captain America and Tony Stark, they could lead the others on the right path. Nick Fury knew this, of course. Without a reliable leader, the team would face numerous internal problems. Strange told Nick Fury, we need to be better prepared. Everyone must unite. It would be best to call in more people to deal with those super soldiers helping Rory. I believe we can defeat Rory next time. Thor had slain Thanos, he was confident he could take down Rory. Today, he had simply underestimated him. An hour later, the federal government issued a travel ban on SHIELD agents and all members of the new Avengers, prohibiting them from leaving the country, using their superpowers, and issuing notices for many, including the Winter Soldier, to surrender within a specified time. Not only had the operation failed, but they were now under surveillance and wanted criminals. No one could accept such an outcome. After the meeting, Thor found Strange and questioned him. "Sorcerer Strange, I want to know why we have to deal with that guy named Rory. Can't we just recruit him into the Avengers?" Strange shook his head. "Impossible. He's the destroyer of the world, like Ragnarok in Asgard. As long as Rory lives, he's Ragnarok on Earth." Ragnarok in Asgard was still vivid in Thor's mind. The fire giant Surtur defeated his own sister Hela and destroyed Asgard. Thor didn't know what Strange's basis was for concluding that Rory would destroy the world, and he didn't bother to dwell on such a question. Thor, with a thing, left the building and walked to an open space. He raised Stormbreaker and unleashed a 7-colored beam of light. Chapter 63, Getting information out of good kids is the easiest thing to do. A rainbow bridge appeared in the Norwegian town of Asgard. Having just emerged from the bridge, Thor and Korg stared blankly at the dilapidated town, which seemed to have also been the site of a war. What's going on?" Korg spread his hands. "Perhaps it's that person's revenge?" Valkyrie, who had just rescued someone from the ruins, approached after seeing the rainbow bridge. "Thor, the people of Asgard need you. It's the Godslayer." Thor knew about the Godslayer before returning, but he hadn't expected them to arrive so quickly, attacking Asgard while he was dealing with Rory. "Luckily, a friend helped last night. Perhaps you should meet her." The military base entered the post-war reconstruction phase. First, a budget assessment was needed, followed by signatures from the Pentagon and the White House. Construction could only begin after funding was secured. While Rory's underground laboratory wasn't damaged, the reconstruction of the upper floors would inevitably halt experiments underground. And these experiments would be suspended for a considerable period. At night, Rory stood in the back garden of his residence, eyes closed, intently sensing the cosmic energy within his body. As Thor's Stormbreaker axe swung down, Rory, in a moment of desperation, conjured armor from cosmic energy to block the fatal blow. After a moment of meditation, Rory released the cosmic energy gathered in his hands in reverse. Golden light flowed upwards from his arms, enveloping his arms, shoulders, then his body, finally flowing to his feet, until a suit of golden armor was encased in his body. From a distance, he looked like a gold saint? Isn't it said that programmed cosmic energy cannot be altered? Why can I? Rory was extremely curious, but no one could answer this question for him. While controlling the armor, Rory gathered energy in his hands again, trying to conjure a weapon. After a few breaths, Rory could only conjure a short sword of ordinary length, which was the limit he could currently achieve, or rather, the limit of his energy. Rory frowned, lost in thought. Cosmic energy was materialized through his body, but the amount of energy used did not depend on Rory himself, but rather on the fact that the conversion rate of cosmic energy could not keep up. By increasing the speed at which he absorbs cosmic energy, Rory could infinitely extend the length of his magical weapons, even cleaving the earth in two with a single strike. The problem was that he didn't know how to increase the speed of cosmic energy absorption. The next day, Rory arrived at Ingram Street in Queens in a military vehicle. "Sir, we've arrived. Wait for me in the car." Rory got out of the car, checked the address, and then walked into the apartment building. Ding dong click, a still attractive woman appeared behind the door. "You are?" Rory asked with a friendly smile. "Hello, is this the Parker's house?" Aunt May nodded in confusion. "You must be Aunt May. My name is Rory, and I'm Peter Parker's good friend. I just happened to be passing by today and thought I'd drop by to visit Peter. Is this convenient?" "Oh, of course, please come in." Aunt May ushered Rory inside and asked, "Coffee or tea?" "Thank you, just a glass of water will do." Aunt May brought over a glass of water and handed it to Rory, then sat down opposite him and asked, "Rory, right? How did you and Peter meet?" Aunt May wasn't entirely without suspicion. She started probing as soon as she sat down. Rory took a sip of water, put down the glass, and said, "I worked with him for a while, but I was in charge of logistics." "Oh, really? Peter rarely talks to me about his friends." "That's how it is at his age, you know," Aunt May said half-jokingly. After chatting for about half an hour, Peter Parker, returning home from school, came home from his apartment building. Just as he reached his doorstep, whoosh, all the hairs on Peter Parker's body stood on end. His spider sense immediately gave him a strong danger signal. Snap! Peter Parker immediately slipped the web shooter onto his wrist, then carefully unlocked the apartment door with his keys. "Hi Peter, your friend's here." Aunt May and Rory were chatting happily when Peter entered, waving and smiling. Rory had his back to the door. When Peter Parker approached and saw Rory sitting on the sofa, his whole body stiffened, and his heart pounded. He finally understood why he felt such a strong sense of crisis. "Hi Peter Parker, we meet again." "Ahem, hi sir, may I ask who you are?" Peter Parker's nervousness was obvious to anyone. He even tried to pretend he didn't know him. Aunt May's smile faded after seeing Peter Parker's reaction. The relationship between the two didn't seem as pleasant as she had imagined. Rory's smile, in Peter Parker's eyes, was like the gaping maw of a dragon, utterly devoid of friendliness. "We met at the military base in the suburbs yesterday, and you don't recognize me today?" "I'm sorry, sir, I don't know what you're talking about. If there's nothing else, please." Rory glanced at Aunt May, and Peter Parker immediately stepped in front of her. "Sir, I think you should leave." Rory waved his hand. "Don't be nervous. I just want to talk to you. If I came with hostility, you wouldn't be standing here so calmly. Let's talk alone." Peter Parker's biggest fear was Rory using Aunt May to threaten him. Hearing Rory agree to let Aunt May go, Peter Parker immediately turned and gave Aunt May a meaningful look. Although Aunt May was worried, she knew that staying would only be a burden, so she immediately grabbed her keys and code and left the apartment. "Sit down." Rory gestured to the sofa, inviting Peter Parker to sit down and talk. Peter Parker sat down opposite Rory, his nerves on edge, not daring to relax his guard for a moment. This was the intimidating power of superior strength. "Peter, I know you're a good kid, so I don't want you getting involved in these messy things. That's my advice to you." Peter Parker didn't want to talk to Rory much, but his mouth worked faster than his brain. "Sir, I think you should talk to Dr. Strange instead of coming to me." Peter Parker didn't believe Rory's words at all, because Rory had killed Captain America and Falcon right in front of him. Rory smiled slightly. "Everyone has their own perspective. It's neither good nor bad. You're still young. I don't want you to be used and lose your life for nothing, otherwise who will take care of your Aunt May?" But Mr. Strange said you're the destroyer, you'll destroy the world." Peter Parker knew he shouldn't say things like that, but his mouth just wouldn't stop. He wanted to say whatever came to mind. Rory paused for a moment, then chuckled. "What he says is true? Only a fool would believe that." The Ancient One had said the same thing. It wasn't that Rory didn't believe it, but that he thought the future was uncertain. Otherwise, why would history have changed in 1970? Predicting the future assumes history won't change, and the current situation clearly shows Strange's misjudgment. "Alright, that's enough for now. Those superheroes are federal fugitives now. You'd better not have a close ties with them anymore. If you're bored, just be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. If there's a next time, I won't hold back." Rory's purpose in coming today was to find out the Avengers' plans, and before he even started trying to extract information, Peter Parker had spilled the beans. If the Avengers believe he will destroy the world, there will definitely be further actions against him. He then left Queens in a military vehicle. Now it would be Rory's time to retaliate. Chapter 64. Even the strongest exterior has a weak interior. In Hell's Kitchen, only 3 members of the Defenders Quartet remain. Daredevil Matt Murdock is dead, Iron Fist Danny Rand is critically injured, and the survivors are wanted by the Federation, with a public notice ordering them to surrender. Jessica Jones, Iron Fist Danny Rand, and Luke Cage huddle together to discuss their next steps. Luke Cage firmly states, "We should avenge Matt. We can't just give up." Avenge? How? The Federation, the military, or maybe you want to target that guy named Rhodes? Even the strongest Avengers combined couldn't handle him. We're no match for him. Nick Fury has a plethora of agents under his command, backed by the Security Council and the Avengers. Conflict might be avoided, but SHIELD and the Avengers will certainly face difficulties. Did Matt die in vain? We can't just do nothing. Of course not, but we can't do anything on our own. Let's wait for news from SHIELD and the Avengers. Danny Rand's arm needs time to recover. Whatever they want to do, they must heal first. Jessica Jones went to the restaurant bar, opened a bottle of whiskey, and prepared to drown her sorrows. Iron Fist Danny Rand and Luke Cage walked out of the restaurant together, parting ways at the intersection. On his way back to his apartment, Luke Cage sensed something was wrong as soon as he crossed a street. Quiet, the street was eerily quiet, and he quickened his pace. After a few steps, Luke Cage suddenly stopped. 2 soldiers in combat uniforms blocked his path. and he recognized them, the super soldiers he had fought during the attack on the military base the previous night. Luke Cage looked around. He was surrounded on all sides. Having suffered a great loss yesterday, Luke Cage dared not fight back directly. The next second, he accelerated forward, trying to break through the encirclement and escape. Bang! He punched one super soldier away, ignoring the other, and continued running. Just when he thought he had successfully escaped, a golden light suddenly shone in the dark street. With a deafening boom, a golden giant sword over 2.5 meters long appeared out of thin air, slamming Luke Cage back. Luke Cage took 3 seconds to break free of the encirclement, then a second to fly back the same way, crashing to the ground with a thud. 5 or 6 super soldiers immediately surrounded him, pinning him down. Luke Cage was indeed an invulnerable superhuman, and undeniably strong, enough to withstand 100 ordinary people, but against super soldiers of equal strength, he lost all his advantages. Rory sheathed his energy sword and emerged from the shadows, glancing indifferently at Luke Cage. "Tie him up," he said. "Take him away." Without Thor and Captain Marvel, Rory could have even led a group of super soldiers to confront the Avengers head-on. But now that Thor and Captain Marvel were back, Rory opted for the more cautious approach of taking them down one by one. The super soldiers bound Luke Cage like a mummy with restraints, then shackled him with heavy metal handcuffs and leg irons. Several military vehicles drove up, loaded Luke Cage onto them, and sped away. Danny Land, who hadn't gone far, heard the commotion and immediately ran over, witnessing the entire capture of Luke Cage. Unfortunately, his arm was broken, preventing him from using his iron fist. Even if he could, it would be a death sentence. After the military vehicles left, Danny Land immediately returned to the restaurant and told Jessica Jones about Luke Cage's capture. "I'll go find SHIELD and have them rescue Luke Cage." The military vehicles returned to the military base and drove directly into a huge warehouse. "Hang him up." Chains hooked Luke Cage's hands, suspending him in midair. Luke Cage possessed an invulnerable body and wasn't worried about what Rory would do to him. He neither struggled nor screamed. Rory walked up to Luke Cage and asked, "How did you get your superpowers?" "How, do you think I'd tell you?" Of the 4 members of the Defenders, Rory was currently only interested in Luke Cage. Danny Land's abilities came from training, Daredevil's from enhanced senses and radiation perception, and Jessica Jones's blood had already been studied. Therefore, Luke Cage became Rory's first target. Rory asked curiously, "Is your mouth really that hard?" "HMPH, you'll find out if you try," Luke Cage said disdainfully. Rory nodded, "I'll try." Luke Cage initially didn't understand what Rory meant until he saw Rory bring a mouth expander and shove it into his mouth. Rory twisted the wrench, and Luke Cage's mouth was stretched wider and wider. "I heard your skin is invulnerable and as hard as iron. Your tongue should be soft, right? If even your tongue is hard, then you're too." He then took the vibranium syringe from the super soldier and plunged it into Luke Cage's mouth without hesitation. Ouch! A large tube of blood was drawn and collected into a blood vial. Looking at Luke Cage, who was trembling with pain, Rory asked, "What if you get sick and need surgery? Won't you suffer to death?" Rory shrugged and smiled, "Perhaps I can do some viral experiments on you, like pouring organ-corroding agents into your mouth, or maybe some cancer cells." Luke Cage shook his head frantically, his mouth agape, unable to speak coherently, but Rory still understood that Luke Cage was implying he was a devil. No, you attacked the military base first. You're the one who's a fugitive terrorist now. Luke Cage forced a smile, "It's SHIELD, it has nothing to do with me." "Oh? Then are you willing to stand up and accuse SHIELD of illegal actions?" Luke Cage fell silent. Rory smiled slightly, "I'll give you one night to consider. If you agree, I'll let you go. Actually, I'd rather you disagree, so I have a legitimate reason to send you to the lab." After saying that, Rory turned and left, leaving 2 super soldiers to guard Luke Cage. Back at his lodgings, Rory received a call from Secretary of State Ross. "Rory, Bucky the Winter Soldier has been found." "Where?" Rory hadn't forgotten his promise. He said he'd send Bucky down to reunite with Steve, and he meant it. "He went to Wakanda last night with Black Panther Chatra." Wakanda was a closed little world, possessing advanced technology far surpassing the rest of the world, having the only vibranium mine on Earth, and having single-handedly held off Thanos' vanguard army. Rory frowned and asked, "Is there any way to bring him back?" "I'll try to use diplomacy to put pressure on Wakanda," but I can't guarantee whether they'll release him." Rory smiled coldly to himself. The revenge had only just begun, and none of them would escape. Chapter 65 Scientific research is the accidental discovery of things never seen before. The next morning, after washing up and having breakfast, he led several super soldiers to the warehouse from the previous night. Luke Cage, still suspended in midair, had a gag in his mouth. "So, what's your decision?" Luke Cage looked up at Rory, neither nodding nor shaking his head. Rory chuckled and waved his hand, saying, "Notify the lab building to shut down for the day. I need to use the lab." Two super soldiers lowered Luke Cage down and followed Rory to the underground lab. After securing Luke Cage on the lab table, Rory approached with several syringes, explaining, "I have HIV, lymphoma cells, motor neuron testing viruses, and blood viruses here. I wonder if your steel frame can withstand them." Biological experiments always involve viruses. For example, the super soldier serum was a genetically enhanced serum extracted by Rory after cancer cells killed Steve's original cells. Virus cultivation isn't difficult. Most biological and environmental laboratories around the world have departments for storing and cultivating viruses. Luke Cage's eyes were filled with fear, but he still refused to give in, only struggling. Just as the needle was about to pierce his flesh, Luke Cage finally relented. I agree. Sigh, I thought you were a real tough guy." Rory withdrew the needle, looking disappointed. Turning to the super soldier, he said, "Take him back to record the evidence against SHIELD, give the evidence to Ross, and have him issue an arrest warrant for Captain Marvel, Carol." After the super soldier took Luke Cage away, Rory sat down at the lab table to study the blood sample he had taken the previous night. Luke Cage's superpowers were a result of a mutation in a biochemical experiment, categorized as radiation-induced genetic enhancement. This type of enhancement had a very low ceiling, and Rory certainly wouldn't use it himself, but he could use it for super soldier experiments. He would purify the radiation virus, fuse it into a genetic serum that had deciphered the genetic code, and rewrite the gene sequence. Squeak squeak. Rory grabbed a white mouse that was munching on nuts. Every time he obtained a new blood sample, Rory would conduct an experiment using the mouse's serum. From the beginning of serum research to the present, all serums have been developed with the aim of enhancing the body's gene strength, except for mice. Therefore, Rory uses mouse serum as the standard for gene strength testing. The mice, happily eating, are suddenly grabbed and injected. They immediately become unhappy, flailing their claws and squeaking. After the blood is drawn and they are put down, the mice whoosh and disappear. After the RNA testing is complete, Rory sits in front of an electron microscope and uses a cell needle to inject the mouse's genes into Luke Cage's cells, and then injects Luke Cage's genes into the mouse's cells. The results of exchanging nuclei are completely different. The mouse's gene level is higher than Luke Cage's. After Luke Cage's cells are injected with the mouse's genes, they immediately begin to expand and divide, showing a significant increase in strength. Conversely, the mouse cells injected with Luke Cage's genes wither within seconds and then lose vitality. Oh my god! After being injected with Thanos' genes, the mice's genetic similarity to Rory reached 84%, representing a certain level of Rory's genetic strength. A few minutes after injecting Luke Cage's cells, a new type of blood cell differentiated, a discovery that slightly surprised Rory. Radiation virus enhancement serum? Should I try it? If categorizing enhancement methods, in Rory's mind, it would be high-dimensional gene enhancement, self-gene enhancement, radiation virus enhancement, biological gene fusion. Rory used Eternal's genes to replace his own. Captain America Steve Rogers and Captain Marvel Carol Danvers were classified as having their own genes enhanced. Dr. Erkin's era had limited resources, preventing the creation of more powerful serums. Otherwise, Steve Rogers might have been even more powerful. Spider-Man, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and the Hulk were all related to radiation viruses, which could be biochemical agents, viruses contaminated with radiation, or rays. External pressure caused mutations in their genes, which Rory called radiation virus enhancement. As for the last type of enhancement, gene fusion, the most typical example is Dr. Lizard. In Rory's view, the fusion of genes from different species was the lowest form of behavior, which he called aberrations. Biologists hated aberrations. They were neither human nor ghost, completely violating the basic principles of biology. Now, Having unintentionally created a radiation virus enhancement serum, Rory instantly had the idea of conducting human trials. Bring the remaining 2 test volunteers over, immediately. Secretary of State Ross had previously sent 4 test volunteers, 2 had died, leaving 2, which were perfect for this experiment. Soon, the 2 volunteers were sent to the laboratory. One claimed to be innocent and wanted to reduce his sentence by participating in the experiment. The other was a disabled veteran missing his right arm who wanted to participate in the human trial to leave a large sum of money for his family. Rory sat in a chair, looking at the 2 men's recent medical reports. He said, "First, I must clarify that this experiment carries certain risks, and I don't know what the consequences will be." The disabled soldier said calmly, "That would be best. If I die, my family can get more money." The criminal who claimed innocence echoed, "If I die, I hope the Federation can pardon my crimes. I don't want to die while still bearing a crime I shouldn't have." Rory closed the medical report and smiled slightly. Sometimes, death isn't the most painful thing. What's more painful is living a life worse than death. Rory led the 2 men to the experimental area. After drawing blood, they first conducted a basic cell rejection test. As long as the genes weren't identical, a rejection reaction would generally occur. Rory would adjust the serum concentration based on the intensity of the rejection reaction to achieve a balanced level. "You go first," Rory said, pointing to the disabled soldier. "Take off your clothes and lie down on the experimental table." The radiation virus serum enhancement didn't require a bioenergy conversion chamber. During the enhancement process, the radiation would autonomously alter the host's genetic mutations, destroying and repairing simultaneously until the genetic modification was complete. The biggest drawback of this mutation was the unpredictability of the outcome. The same vial of radiation virus serum might cause different mutations in different people, which is why Rory rarely studies radiation virus serum. He dislikes the feeling of surrendering oneself to fate. The disabled soldier, stripped down to his underwear, lay taut on the experimental table. Although not afraid of death, no one can remain calm in this situation, stemming from the primal human fear of the unknown. "Use restraints to hold him in place, not too tight, just enough so he can't break free," Rory instructed the volunteer criminals while adjusting the serum. After adjusting the serum, he turned on the video recorder to record the entire experiment. Time: 10:27 a.m., 26th. N1 radiation virus serum human trial, first time. Subject's name: Anthony, age 41, weight 183 pounds, heart rate 137, serum concentration adjusted to 47%. Rory presented the experimental data in front of the video recorder, then took the radiation virus serum to the experimental table to begin the experiment. Chapter 66, Enhancement is like taking hormones, mutation is like opening blind boxes. Bite down, it might hurt a lot later. Using the light wave imaging device, he located the median cubital vein on the soldier's arm. After the soldier nodded, Rory slowly inserted the syringe into the vein. The soldier immediately felt a peculiar pain. Rory pressed down on the soldier's arm to prevent the needle from rolling, continuously injecting the radiation virus serum into his body. Ugh! The pain became increasingly intense, starting with redness on the arm, until the entire body turned reddish-purple. Rory removed the syringe and placed it on a tray beside him. Holding the video camera, he pointed it at the test subject and said, "Significant rejection reaction, subcutaneous tissue congestion. Pupils dilated, irregular breathing, unconscious. Heart rate 197, the heart is still working, suspected serum fusion successful. Hair loss symptoms appear, DNA is recombinating, no, unknown changes." Bone spurs had even grown on the disabled soldier's elbows, knees, and shoulders, a change that Rory hadn't anticipated. As originally assumed, the serum should retain human physical characteristics. This mutation was clearly not human. The next second, an even longer bone spur grew from the disabled soldier's severed arm, almost the same length as his other arm. Rory quickly put the video camera away, grabbed a flashlight, and went to the lab table, gripping its chin and shouting, "Stay awake. Can you hear me?" The disabled soldier's pupils contracted slightly, but otherwise showed no reaction. "Listen, if you can hear me, you'd better stay sane, or you'll definitely die. Changes in the human body's structure can potentially lead to mutations. the most obvious characteristic of which is the loss of self-awareness. The original consciousness is eroded by the foreign gene. Many villains undergo personality changes after successful experiments, precisely because of this. The disabled soldier seemed to have truly heard Luo Rui's words. The bone spur on his body slowly retracted, returning to its normal form. He gradually calmed down, and an hour later, the redness faded, and his body hair, eyebrows, and pubic hair grew back, but white. Luo Rui suspected it was due to the influence of the lab rats, hence the white, for he wondered if his genitals had also turned white. 2 hours later, his heart rate returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Luo Rui frowned, observing the data read from the machine, especially the brainwaves. Based on the current brainwave levels, he should have woken up. Turning around, he saw the disabled soldier indeed slowly waking up. I'm not dead? I'm afraid you won't get any more money, Luo Rui joked with a smile. After untying the restraints, he took out a pair of handcuffs and shackles and locked him up. The disabled soldier asked, "What's this for?" "Just a precaution. I'll observe you for a week and conduct a psychological evaluation. Once everything is fine, I'll release you." To prevent changes in the test subject's mentality, necessary measures had to be taken. After extracting the sample, Luo Rui arranged for a super soldier to take the disabled soldier to the detention area, then prepared to continue the next experiment. The criminal volunteer lay down on the experimental table and asked softly, "Sir, will I be like him just now?" "Not necessarily, it varies from person to person." Based on Rory's guess, the disabled soldier had lost an arm, so during the genetic modification process, the viral serum actively repaired a damaged area, causing bone to grow. This change was unpredictable. The serum was more likely genetically modified based on the subject's defects. Time: 2:08 p.m., 26th. N1 radiation virus serum human trial, second round. Subject's name: Payne, age 36, weight 155 pounds, heart rate 129, serum concentration increased to 51%. Rory repeated the previous steps. This time, the subject indeed didn't grow bone spurs, but his skin became abnormally hard. Unlike Luke Cage, whose skin, though impervious to bullets and blades, still felt like touching steel, the subject's skin had no elasticity. The radiation virus serum is truly like opening a blind box. How it mutates depends entirely on the whim of Lady Luck. 3 hours passed in the blink of an eye, and the second subject slowly woke up. "Sir, I seem to have gained a lot of strength." The convict volunteer was more lucid than the disabled veteran, and could even communicate normally after waking up. Rory nodded, took a scalpel, and made a cut on his arm. A sharp, white line remained, leaving the skin intact. His mutant ability was similar to Luke Cage's, the difference would only be known after further testing. Rory untied the restraints, tossed him the handcuffs and shackles, and said, "Put them on yourself. Go back and isolate for a while. Once everything is fine, I'll arrange for you to visit your family." The convict volunteer immediately expressed his gratitude. "Sir, thank you so much. If I were to say, if my abilities could help you, I would do anything for you." A reduced sentence and going home were his greatest wishes, and he had unexpectedly gained superpowers. His gratitude was overwhelming. A normal person would be extremely excited to gain superpowers, but he remained true to himself and never considered using his powers for any purpose. His character was truly rare. Luo Rui nodded in satisfaction. "Don't worry, if you pass the subsequent tests, I can not only exempt you from punishment, but also arrange a very good job for you. Go back now." The criminal volunteer bowed to Luo Rui, then followed the two super soldiers back to the detention area. The two test subjects needed to be kept in solitary confinement and were not allowed any opportunity to communicate. After the experiment, Luo Rui conducted a preliminary comparison of the data collected from the two test subjects. Both of them showed obvious mutations in their genes. Uncontrollable mutations could not be determined to be good or bad. In Luo Rui's mind, such results were far less simple and practical than the super soldier serum. Luo Rui deleted the radiation virus serum formula from the computer and then put the remaining serum into the refrigerator. Civilian mutants would never be as useful as the military's super soldier legion. Starting from the next day, Luo Rui created super soldiers while going to the place where the test subjects were detained to collect data. The disabled soldier was named Anthony, and the ability he gained was to grow a bone blade on his arm, about 30 centimeters long. After a CT scan, it was discovered that the bone blade was located inside the bone in the back half of the arm. When using its power, it would extend from inside the arm bone, its hardness far exceeding that of ordinary human bone, similar to the hardness of steel. The bone blade also possessed a certain degree of regenerative ability, but the recovery speed after damage was very slow. Physically, it was enhanced, with a physical strength similar to that of a typical super soldier, far less monstrous than Luke Cage. The criminal test subject was named Payne. He gained enhanced strength and a body of steel, essentially inheriting Luke Cage's abilities. The difference was that Payne's muscle strength was similar to that of an ordinary person under normal circumstances, but after using his power, his skin lost elasticity, and his strength became almost equivalent to Luke Cage's. After collecting data on Anthony and Payne, Rory came out just in time to see Luke Cage being escorted into an armored vehicle by several people. Rory asked curiously, "What's going on?" "Good morning, sir. Luke Cage will be attending a hearing later. After the hearing, he will be sent to the floating prison to serve his permanent sentence. P.S. Thanks to readers and for their donations. Thanks for the recommendation votes and monthly tickets, brothers. If you still have any votes left, don't hold back, hand them over now." Author's note on the launch of Chapter 67. Although this isn't my first time writing a release announcement, I'm still quite excited. Luckily, I have some drafts saved up, so I'm not too panicked. The original plan was to release on March 1st, but after communicating with the editor, we decided to change it to the 5th at noon for VIP chapters. I also hope you guys can give it a push and see if there's still a chance for another recommendation. Let me first report on the results. With your support, we reached a peak of 20th on the overall chart and second in our category. We've consistently held the second position, almost unshaken, even after 2 previous category leaders. This achievement was something I never expected, and I'm extremely grateful for your support. I hope you guys will support us with another wave of first day subscriptions. If you have any, please show your support. If you have any votes, please vote. I promise I'll work hard to update. I've also made some adjustments to the plot outline based on your feedback, still using the timeline and parallel universes as the foundation, connecting them with previously created plot points. I will strive to write each stage of the story well, bringing you a unique fan-created Marvel world. Finally, I'd like to thank everyone in advance for your initial pre-order support. Thank you so much. Chapter 68 Reunited with an old friend. Please do me a favor, seeking first subscription. During the Avengers Civil War, Ross used the floating raft prison to hold Avengers who violated the Sokovia Accords. He spent a lot of money, but failed to keep the Avengers in place. It's unclear what Ross was thinking, intending to imprison superhumans in such a place. After Luke Cage was taken away, Rory returned to the lab to continue his work. The number of super soldiers has now increased to 21, and the military has procured carbon steel armor and various individual equipment for them. The mutants Anthony and Payne haven't passed their psychological tests yet and are not included. At this point, Rory has completely lost interest in mutants, and he has sealed away the radiation virus serum. He is now researching the differences between Thanos' genes and the Eternals' genes. Rory hasn't stopped his research despite becoming stronger. The lab door opened with a beep, and Night Order Super Soldier Number 1 entered, reporting, "Sir, the team escorting Luke Cage was attacked by an unknown force. He's been rescued. Mr. Ross wants to deploy a Night Order team for a capture mission." Rory, wearing goggles, leaned against the electron microscope, carefully observing something, and without looking up, said, "No need. I injected Luke Cage with a mutated gene strain. He won't live much longer." Yes, sir." Super Soldier Number 1 saluted and left the lab. A moment later, Rory straightened up, removed his goggles, and scratched his head in frustration, saying, "What's limiting the speed of cosmic energy absorption?" Rory had a question in his mind when watching the Eternal Icarus. Why couldn't the energy rays emitted from his eyes be fired continuously like Superman's, but rather intermittently, seemingly without harm? Now Rory understood. It was because Icarus's cosmic energy supply was insufficient, so he had to rest after each shot. If there were a continuous supply of cosmic energy, Icarus's eyes could continuously emit energy beams until the enemy died. Icarus was also the most powerful of the 10 Eternals, and the other Eternals would naturally have the same problem. So there must be something limiting the speed at which they absorbed cosmic energy. Rory believed that as long as he could solve this mystery, he would be invincible. When Ross arrived at the SHIELD base with his Knights of Super Soldiers, it was already deserted. Damn it, immediately order all departments to find everyone. I don't believe so many people can just disappear into thin air. In fact, they could. Not only were the people gone, but the equipment had also been taken away. A day later, the intelligence agency delivered a photo to Ross's desk. Mr. Ross, this photo was taken 3 hours ago. The Hulk has been spotted in a bay in southeastern Georgia. Snap, depart immediately. The Hulk was Ross's obsession, and Bruce Banner was his first choice if he couldn't capture the other Avengers. Ross then immediately boarded a military aircraft and led his Knights of Super Soldiers to the southeastern coast. The moment he left, Rory in the lab received Ross's message about capturing the Hulk. Rory smiled faintly, letting Ross do as he pleased. Ross had made a wasted trip anyway, and he had no chance of finding Banner. As night fell, Rory walked out of the still under construction lab building, got into a jeep, and drove straight away from the military base. 2 hours later, he entered New York City, and 2.5 hours later, he arrived in Midtown Manhattan. Hell's Kitchen in 2023 was almost identical to Hell's Kitchen in 2008. Relying on his memory, he arrived at a place where he had once hidden, and a smile involuntarily appeared on his lips. Judging from the timeline, it seemed like he hadn't been gone for long, but in reality, it had been a long time. Get out of the way, kid. You're blocking my way. 3 black figures approached, one of them reaching out to shove Rory. This scene seemed familiar, and it seemed to be the same group of people. Whoosh, a golden light flashed from Rory's hand, and the black figure's arm that had reached out to shove Rory was instantly severed and fell to the ground. The black figure was stunned for a moment, then reacted, clutching its wound and yelling, "Ah! My hand! Fuck!" His 2 companions, instead of thinking about treating his injury, instinctively wanted to continue causing trouble for Rory. Rory suspected these people were brainless, driven only by physical instinct. Whoosh! A broken leg kicked, a broken hand punched. In the blink of an eye, the 3 little black guys were all crippled. Hell, your retribution is me. He was bullied when he was just an ordinary person, but now that he's stronger, would he let a few punks bully him? Eliminating a karmic link, Rory's mind instantly cleared. Following his memory, he walked along the road, finding a bar moments later. Across the street, the security camera showed the signal receiver he had installed. He continued along the road, soon arriving at Jessica Jones's apartment. Golden light formed a dagger in Rory's right hand, easily slicing through the lock on Jessica Jones's door. Then he pushed open the door and slowly went inside. 10 minutes later, Jessica Jones, her face covered by a hood, returned to the apartment under the cover of darkness. As soon as she reached the door, she found the lock had been broken. Pushing it open, she rushed inside and was dumbfounded. A smiling Rory was sitting on the sofa, watching her. "I advise you not to make a move, because you're no match for me, and don't even think about running away, because you can't escape." Jessica Jones asked warily, "Sir, why are you in my house? This is private property. I have the right to demand things from you." "Demand what?" Rory stood up and walked to Jessica Jones, the light blade that materialized in his hand slowly lengthening until it stopped at Jessica Jones's throat. If Jessica Jones hadn't participated in the operation at the military base, Rory might have still held on to their past relationship. "You'd better not demand anything from me, I'm the one making demands." The materialized cosmic energy had a tangible feel but no temperature. With her throat pressed against him, Jessica Jones tilted her head back, trying to avoid the pressure, but dared not move her feet, afraid of provoking a violent reaction from Rory. "What do you want?" Jessica Jones clenched her fists tightly, trying to keep her voice calm. "Luke Cage has been kidnapped." "Who did it?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Jessica Jones's eyes widened in surprise. She genuinely knew nothing about it. Rory reached into Jessica Jones's pocket, pulled out his phone, and shoved it into her hand, saying, "Call Dannyland and tell him to come over right now." Ross was too unreliable. So much time had passed and he hadn't even caught a single Avenger, and he'd even lost Luke Cage, whom he'd captured. A useless piece of trash. Rory decided to take matters into his own hands. Jessica Jones hesitated for a long time before finally dialing the number. Half an hour later, Iron Fist Dannyland arrived at Jessica Jones's apartment, equally shocked to see Rory. "I've come to see you two today for no other reason than to invite you back for a chat." I wonder if you two would be willing to give me that favor? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 The Resentful Fugitive, Seeking First Subscription. A sudden light flashed in Jessica Jones' apartment, followed by a figure crashing through the wall and landing on the street. The light didn't emanate from Rory, but from Iron Fist Danny Land's energy punch, delivered despite his injuries. Rory, caught off guard, crashed through the wall and onto the street. Far from being angry, Rory even wore a happy smile. So ki is also a kind of cosmic energy. The next second, Rory jumped back into the apartment from where he crashed. Whoosh! Jessica Jones charged forward, swinging her fist, only to be grabbed by the neck by Rory. Do you want to die that badly? Jessica Jones tried to say something, but Rory lifted her high into the air and slammed her to the ground. Boom! Jessica Jones' head lolled to the side, and she fell asleep. Iron Fist Danny Land's fist emitted light again, but unlike Rory's, Danny Land's light was soft, almost flowing. Whoosh! A giant square shield instantly appeared in front of Rory. Clang! The Iron Fist slammed into the shield, but neither Rory nor Danny Land were seriously injured. The energy rippled outwards, sending things tumbling through Jessica Jones's house. Whoosh! The golden shield vanished, and a rapier appeared in Rory's other hand, instantly piercing Danny Land's body. Don't move. If I withdraw the rapier, you'll die from internal bleeding in less than 3 minutes. Are you sure you want to resist? Street heroes are no match for Rory. Jessica Jones only knew how to swing her fists wildly, completely without any strategy. Iron Fist Danny Land was injured, and even without the injury, he posed no threat to Rory. Now, Iron Fist's life was in Rory's hands, and he couldn't afford to act recklessly. A few minutes later, a military vehicle escorted Jessica Jones and Danny Land back to the military base. The medic stitched up Iron Fist Danny Land's wounds and threw him into an iron cell within the base. Rory, now dressed in clean clothes, arrived at the iron cell with a blood sample collection device. After drawing a vial of Danny Land's blood, he warned, "Don't even think about escaping. If that magician opens a portal to take you away, I advise you not to go with him, because you might die if I find you again." With that, he walked out of the iron cell with the blood sample. Jessica Jones suddenly rushed over, grabbing the iron bars and shouting, "Haven't we met somewhere before?" Rory paused, firmly shaking his head in denial. "No, we haven't met. You've mistaken me for someone else." Watching Rory's departing figure, Jessica Jones wondered if it was just her imagination, but she felt as if she had seen Rory somewhere before. Rory returned to the lab and began monitoring various data points from the blood sample of Iron Fist Danny Land. Sure enough, he discovered a difference. Danny Land's cell membrane and the Eternal cell membrane possessed the same energy-conducting material, indicating that Danny Land's Iron Fist also used cosmic energy. However, his method of using it was slightly crude. It couldn't be materialized, only serving to strengthen his fist. Following this, Rory conducted a microscopic study of the cell membranes in Danny Land's blood sample. The study revealed that although they contained the same substances, Danny Land's were thicker. If this substance were compared to a circuit in electrical conduction, Danny Land's conduction efficiency would certainly be better. Could this be one of the benefits of cultivation? Upon receiving this result, Rory immediately became excited. As long as he could find the differentiation, Rory had a chance to become stronger, but the problem was that he didn't know how to cultivate. Is transplantation possible? Do I really have to start cultivating? The next morning, Rory practiced Tai Chi in his backyard. After taking a shower, he brought breakfast and turned on the television. According to congressional spokesperson, SHIELD's actions have been classified as organized defection, and the Pentagon has formally submitted a document to the Security Council suspending all SHIELD operations. Avengers members, including Clint Barton, James Rhodes, and Bruce Banner, have been placed on a global wanted list. The military has clearly stated that defection will not be tolerated. According to sources, SHIELD Director Nick Fury planned and organized an attack on a military base located 124 kilometers from New York. The news on television was almost entirely about superheroes. Rory was puzzled. Although he hadn't had much contact with Nick Fury, the current Nick Fury was completely different from the one he remembered. How could the cunning one-eyed fox have come to this? Ring ring. Just as Rory was pondering this, the phone rang. Hello. Sir, Anthony and Payne's tests are complete. What's next? Rory casually replied, arrange for them to join the team. Also, get me a car, I need to go out for a bit. Rory had promised to take Payne home to visit his family. Now that SHIELD had disappeared and the Avengers were scattered, Rory, in a good mood, decided to go out for a stroll, relax, and take Payne home. Before going to prison, Payne was an accountant, convicted of falsifying accounts and embezzling funds. He'd only been on the job for a month, and all the bad debts from the previous year were now attributed to him, you know what I mean. He lived in the suburbs of Princeton, a rural area with an elderly wife and 3 children. The neighbors knew the family wasn't doing well, the husband was in prison and rarely interacted with others, even the children faced discrimination from their classmates. That day, 3 military Humvees drove into the town, attracting considerable attention, especially when they stopped in front of Payne's house. Neighbors came out of their houses and stood in their yards watching. Even Payne's family dared not leave the house, only standing inside watching through the screen door. The castle lock provided a sense of security. For ordinary people, home was the safest place. Click, the door of the military Humvee opened, and Payne stepped out. His wife, seeing Payne behind the door, covered her mouth in disbelief and immediately pushed open the door, rushing out. Payne. Alia. The two embraced, tears of joy streaming down their faces. Just as the family was enjoying their time together, a missile suddenly came from afar, blasting the Humvee that Rory was riding in with a deafening boom. The Humvee, engulfed in flames, spun 720 degrees in the air, its wreckage still blazing 2 meters high as it hit the ground. Crack, the burning Humvee split open in the middle, and Rory, his face grim, emerged from the flames, looking up at the sky. Tearing off his tattered clothes, he revealed a pure black protective suit underneath. This high-temperature, abrasion-resistant, and tear-resistant suit was something Rory had recently prepared to prevent his clothes from being torn in combat. He hadn't expected to use it so soon. War Machine Rhodes flew overhead, then stopped a short distance away, raising its arm to launch another missile. Bang! Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, and the War Machine armor in the sky staggered. Rhodes' aim shifted, and the micro-missile launched from its arm grazed Rory's cheek, exploding on the roadside. Buzz 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 rat rat rat. 2 Gatling guns suddenly opened fire, spraying bullets at War Machine Rhodes. Rory had only hired 4 super soldiers to drive him, and they immediately began to retaliate upon being attacked. Bang! The super soldier firing suddenly flew into the air, but there was no one around him. Simultaneously, a portal lit up beneath the feet of another super soldier, who, carrying anti-material equipment, lost his footing and vanished from the road. Strange. Rory scoffed, his gaze sweeping around. The next second, a portal appeared behind Rory, and Black Panther Chakravartin and Winter Soldier Bucky burst out. Snap! A massive golden shield suddenly materialized in Rory's hand, blocking their attacks. Hell, looks like you're still not giving up. Chakravartin, deeming communication pointless, swung his vibranium claws at Rory's chest, but they were blocked by the golden armor that materialized on his body. Whoosh! Bang! The armor vanished, and a massive golden sword descended. Chakravartin had no time to dodge and could only raise his arms to block. The two were not on the same level. Chakravartin, under the impact of the immense force, knelt on one knee, barely managing to block Rory's attack. Rory didn't let go, the giant sword pressing down on Chakravartin, rendering him immobile. Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, charged forward, swinging his metal arm, and landed a punch on Payne with a clang. Payne's hardened skin was like steel, easily blocking Bucky's punch. Then Payne and the Winter Soldier grappled. Bucky was a seasoned fighter, skilled in every movement and footwork, while Payne, a newly acquired mutant with 0 fighting experience, was impervious to bullets and blades, but while his striking ability was poor, his resilience was unparalleled. Payne held off Bucky, and the 2 super soldiers, wielding Gatling guns, chased after War Machine. Rhodes, using his greatsword to pin Black Panther down, sneered, "You'd rather not be a king than come here to die, huh?" "Who dies, is still uncertain," Black Panther said, straining to speak while carrying the greatsword. The next second, Rhodes suddenly felt something hit him. It didn't hurt, but it was annoying. Ant-Man? No wonder the super soldier had tripped, and Ant had been causing trouble. Rory looked around but couldn't find Ant-Man Scott. He sneered. "Scott, I advise you to think carefully before you act. Don't forget you have a family and children. Are you sure you want to get involved?" Family was Ant-Man's biggest weakness, especially the 5 years he missed spending with his daughter during the cataclysm, which he always felt guilty about. Seeing that Ant-Man was no longer causing trouble, Rory pinned Black Panther down with one hand and conjured a dagger with the other, preparing to deliver a fatal blow. Suddenly, two portals opened simultaneously on Rory's left and right. Whoosh bang! Captain Marvel flew out from the right, grabbing Rory and crashing into the left portal. Swoosh! The portal disappeared in the blink of an eye. Rory, who had been knocked into the portal, suddenly found himself in an unfamiliar environment, surrounded by endless white snow. Captain Marvel was thrown out by Rory and rolled several times on the snow before coming to a stop. Besides Captain Marvel, there were Doctor Strange, Dr. Banner, Abomination Bronski, and an Asian man with iron rings on his hands. Rory looked around and asked, "Where is Thor? Why isn't he here?" "HMPH, we're more than enough to deal with you," Captain Marvel Carol sneered, golden light emanating from her body as she charged forward. Clang! A golden greatsword appeared instantly, knocking Carol away. Unable to regain her footing, Carol crashed into a distant snow-capped peak. Strange's ruined whip lashed out, easily shattered by Rory. For some reason, Strange formed hand seals and opened them, actually trying to use the blade of Vishanti to engage Rory in close combat? More absurd than an old man hanging himself. Roar! Dr. Banner roared and charged towards Rory, but stopped halfway, slamming his hands together. Crack! A massive shockwave swept in, whipping up a blizzard. With a clang, Luo Rui's energy sword pierced the ice, only swaying slightly despite the shockwave. Chapter 70 are those who know when to yield, treated like beasts of burden, seeking first subscription. Banner, the Hulk, had learned his lesson. Knowing that Rhodes' golden greatsword could harm him, he became hesitant in close combat. Whoosh! The golden greatsword vanished, transforming into two one-handed swords, one on each side, relentlessly slashing at the Hulk and Abomination. Rhodes leaped onto Abomination's head, his two swords aimed at Abomination's neck, coldly saying, "I said I'd help you get out of prison, but you've joined these wanted criminals. I'm truly disappointed." Clang! Rhodes' swords failed to kill Abomination. Instead, they were blocked by several rings. Shang-Chi? 10 rings? The surviving Abomination scrambled to the side, still explaining to Rhodes, "Sir, please listen to me. They brought me out, and said they'd pardon me immediately if they caught you. Only Nick Fury, that big liar, could say such a thing." Abomination, being frightened, dared not attack Rhodes again and watched the show from the sidelines. Clang 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 clang! 10 iron rings flew wildly, returning to Shang-Chi's wrist in the next second, charging towards Luo Rui simultaneously after gathering power. Luo Rui materialized a shield to block the 10 rings. Then the 10 rings linked together to form a whip that lashed out at Luo Rui. The shield disappeared, and Luo Rui caught one of the 10 rings that had been thrown at him. Luo Rui suddenly paused, realizing he could clearly sense cosmic energy emanating from the iron ring. He immediately channeled this cosmic energy into the iron ring he had caught. Buzz buzz buzz! The orange iron ring turned bright gold in the next second, simultaneously severing its connection with the other 9 iron rings. Oh ho! I didn't expect the 10 rings to be a product of the celestial race. Unable to materialize cosmic energy, they use it in this way. Not bad. Give it back to me. Shang-Chi shouted. Luo Rui put the iron ring on his hand, suddenly noticing that the absorption rate of cosmic energy within his body had increased slightly. His eyes lit up. What a treasure! He chuckled. No, it should be given back to me. He then charged directly at Shang-Chi, preparing to snatch the other 9 rings. Boom! Captain Marvel burst through the snow-capped peaks. Strange, wielding the blade of Vishanti, followed closely behind. Dr. Banner, the Hulk, clenched his fists and sprinted across the snow. Shang-Chi, in front of him, drew his 9 rings and assumed a defensive stance. Surrounded in the middle, Rory remained unfazed. Without Thor's Stormbreaker, these people couldn't harm him. To the others, Rory appeared to be reaching for Shang-Chi's 9 rings, but the giant sword Rory conjured suddenly lengthened by 10 centimeters, and when swung, it wasn't aimed at Shang-Chi, but behind him. Die! Whoosh! Strange, who had caught up, froze for a moment, then the blade of Vishanti shattered instantly, severing his arm in the process. Doctor Strange! Doctor! Ah! A bloody arm fell to the snow, soaking a large patch of crimson. Simultaneously attacking Strange, Banner's enormous fist sent Rory flying. Captain Marvel caught up, unleashing an energy attack with both hands, but unexpectedly, below lay a bottomless glacial crevasse, and Rhodes fell directly into the abyss. Dr. Banner helped Strange, who had lost an arm, to his feet. Shang-Chi picked up the severed arm, saying, "We should still be able to get him to the hospital in time. How are we going to get back with Strange's arm broken?" Captain Marvel could fly, but carrying Strange at high speed would definitely cause an accident. "My phone," Strange gritted his teeth and said. Carol quickly pulled a phone from Strange's body, found the name Wang, and dialed it. A few minutes later, a portal opened, and the sorcerer surnamed Wang shouted from behind the door, "Come in quickly, I'll take you to the hospital." Hulk, Banner, carrying Strange, was the first to enter the portal, followed closely by Carol. Just as Shang-Chi was about to enter, the icy ground suddenly broke open, and Rhodes emerged from beneath the ice. "Stay here." A hand grabbed Shang-Chi's wrist as he stepped into the portal, and the sorcerer surnamed Wang immediately closed it in fright. Rory pulled outwards, Shang-Chi pulled inwards, and just before the portal closed completely, several iron rings were yanked off by Rory with a clatter. Back in the Sanctum Sanctorum, Shang-Chi looked at his wrist, now only bearing 6 iron rings, and was on the verge of tears. The portal disappeared, and Rory turned to the only one left behind, Abomination. Abomination knelt down, hands clasped together. "Sir, please don't kill me, I was forced." He begged for mercy, inwardly cursing the Avengers as no good. Everyone else had left, except him. Wasn't this betraying his teammates? Rory put the 3 iron rings he had just acquired on his wrist, conjured a great sword in his hand, and approached Abomination. The blade rested on Abomination's shoulder. "Give me a reason not to kill you. I surrender. I want to serve you, sir. I'm willing to be your slave." In the vast, icy world, only he and Rory remained. No one could understand the despair Abomination felt. He'd rather be a slave than admit defeat. He'd even call someone daddy, unless he wanted to die. HMPH, Rory slowly sheathed his greatsword, then jumped onto Abomination's shoulder and said, "Head southeast." Rory's phone was destroyed when the military Humvee exploded. Now, the most urgent thing was to find a way back. "Yes, sir." Abomination carried Rory at breakneck speed, truly becoming a beast of burden this time. At the Payne family home in Princeton countryside, the battle ended quickly after Rory's disappearance. Black Panther Chatra and War Machine Rhodes escaped, while Payne and 3 super soldiers captured Winter Soldier Bucky. Rory's disappearance caused no ripples in society, but it caused quite a stir among the higher-ups. Because only Rory could create the immortality potion, it concerned the lives of a group of powerful figures at the pinnacle of power. Half an hour after Rory's disappearance, all departments immediately sprang into action, operating with unprecedented efficiency, with only one goal, to find Rory. "Sir, according to the Knights of Faith, Dr. Rory was pulled into a portal by Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. We don't know where he went." Ross said grimly, "Investigate. No matter the method, you must bring him back." Whether it was the inhibitor after transforming into Red Hulk or the immortality serum the Immortal Society needed to help him ascend to the presidency, both were inseparable from Rory. Some were even more anxious than Ross. A powerful figure who had just joined the Immortal Society was nearing his end, and the other party had promised to elevate him to the presidency if his life could be extended. But Rory's promised 20 doses of immortality serum hadn't arrived yet. If it dragged on too long, that political tycoon would surely pass away first. "Sir, although we haven't found Dr. Rory, the intelligence agency found this." A photograph lay on Ross's desk, and Ross's eyes instantly narrowed upon seeing it. "Nick Fury?" "Yes, sir. He showed up in Moscow 3 days ago and had contact with several dignitaries. It's highly likely he's defected to the enemy." Ross snorted. "Contact Moscow immediately and have them send him back, otherwise." Ross didn't finish speaking when another person burst into his office. "Sir, Dr. Lowry has been found. He's currently in a small town on the coast of Greenland. He called a military base 10 minutes ago to arrange a plane to pick him up." This was the only good news Ross had heard today, and his gloomy face immediately softened a bit. "Go arrange it." With a military aircraft taking him, Lowry quickly returned to the military base, bringing Abomination back with him. Abomination still hadn't escaped the fate of being imprisoned. He was just moved from one place to another. Hearing that Payne and the super soldiers had worked together to capture Bucky Barnes, Rory gave Payne a small compliment. "Good, work hard for me from now on." Rory patted Payne on the shoulder and added, "You should give yourself a name. Go back and think about it carefully so everyone can understand you better." After saying that, Rory turned and went into the laboratory. He was now eager to know the function of the 10 rings. Since acquiring the 4 stolen iron rings, Rory's body had greatly increased its speed of absorbing cosmic energy. The great sword that could be conjured by his clasped hands was almost 3 meters long. Unfortunately, Rory wasn't a physicist or an energy scientist, and after studying it for a long time, he couldn't figure it out. It was a pity that Tony Stark was gone, otherwise he might have been able to discover something. The 4 iron rings could not only increase the speed of absorbing cosmic energy, but could even be used as weapons, although Rory wasn't proficient in hand-to-hand combat or martial arts, so they weren't as comfortable to use as the great sword. While Rory was studying the 10 rings, Ross came running over in a helicopter. "Dr. Rory, I'm relieved to see you're alright." Ross had been in good spirits lately. The life-extending serum had allowed his black hair and beard to grow back, and his Hulk form was much stronger, as if he were 40 again. Rory knew why he was there and opened the freezer to take out a box of the serum. "Here's what you wanted. Use it sparingly, there won't be any more for a while." "I understand." Ross carefully took the immortality serum, then added, "By the way, we were suddenly attacked today. It's best to be more careful when you go out in the future. If necessary, bring more people with you." Rory nodded. It was an organized and planned operation. "I don't know why Thor didn't participate. I cut off one of Strange's hands, he can forget about opening portals again." Ross then took out the photos of Nick Fury taken in Moscow. After briefly explaining Nick Fury's situation, Rory suddenly realized. No wonder. "What?" Ross didn't hear clearly and asked again. Rory shook his head, not answering Ross's question, but instead fell into deep thought. No wonder Rhodes always seemed so strange during these conflicts with the Avengers. Attacking a military base and running away with SHIELD and the Avengers, such foolishness was clearly beyond Nick Fury's capabilities. Now Rhodes finally understood Nick Fury's intentions. This Nick Fury wasn't Nick Fury at all, but a Skrull in disguise. His goal was to escalate the relationship between Rhodes and the Avengers, and between SHIELD and the Federation. His recent appearance in Moscow was further designed to intensify the conflict between the United States and Russia. This way, the Skrulls could reap the benefits. "This is really troublesome. I just wanted to do my research." So Rhodes shared his conjecture with Ross, letting him deal with these problems. Ross was shocked. It wasn't that he didn't believe Rhodes, but he needed to verify the information, as it involved international relations. After Ross left hastily, Rhodes followed him out of the lab to the place where Bucky was being held. He wanted to fulfill his promise to send Bucky to Hell to meet Steve Rogers, and he would do it personally. However, the Winter Soldier's arm should be kept, as it is made of vibranium, a rare material. Chapter 71 Keeping the Promise, Tiny Ant-Man, Big Trouble. Without his vibranium arm, the Winter Soldier was no match for even a regular super soldier. Rhodes arrived at the iron cage where Bucky was imprisoned. Bucky, head bowed, his hair obscuring his face, made his expression impossible to discern. A super soldier guarding the cage approached Rhodes with a box. Inside was Bucky's vibranium arm. "You can all leave now, and take this to the lab while you're at it." Several super soldiers obeyed and left, leaving only Rhodes and the Winter Soldier in the cage. After everyone left and the door closed, the Winter Soldier looked up and asked, "You're here to kill me?" Rhodes unlocked the cage and entered, calmly saying, "Steve must be bored down there alone. I've come to take you to meet him, it's a promise I made to him." When Rhodes was first brought back by Strange, the Winter Soldier had suggested killing him. From that moment on, Bucky was on Rhodes's death list. The time of death was only slightly delayed. If Bucky had run fast enough, he might have caught up with Steve, who had gone first. Bucky, the Winter Soldier, gave a cold laugh. "Steve was too kind. If you ask me, I should have killed you the first time I captured you. What's the use of saying that now? It's just your powerless rage against fate." A moment later, Rory left the cell, leaving only Bucky's cold body. The body was sent by the military guards to Angus for research. Angus was originally Ross's assistant, but later started his own research on Captain America's body. The Hydra developed enhancement serum in Bucky's body, while not very effective, still had some research value. Inside the Sanctum Sanctorum in London, Chatra, the Black Panther, said in a steady voice, "I'm going back to Wakanda. I'm sorry, everyone, Laurie's fate is up to you now." After saying that, he turned and left the Sanctum Sanctorum, and no one stopped him. Dr. Banner, now back in human form, sighed, "Thor is nowhere to be found, and now even Doctor Strange has lost an arm. We've lost too much? I think we should stop this." One-armed Strange, supporting himself, said, "If we can't eliminate Laurie, we'll destroy our world. And we haven't lost yet." "Not lost? Steve is dead, Sam is dead, Bucky was captured, Chatra is gone, and you've lost an arm and can no longer use magic. How can we win? Do we have to kill every single Avenger?" Banner didn't want to discourage Strange, but he truly saw no hope of victory. Without their spiritual leader, the Avengers were like a pile of loose sand. Even more disheartened was Shang-Chi. He was down to 6 rings, his strength greatly diminished, and he'd gotten himself into a huge mess. Shang-Chi thought he'd joined a righteous cause, but the reason turned out to be a prophecy. A pale-faced Strange said, "If we bring Wanda back, and with Thor and Carol on board, we can definitely win." Captain Marvel, Carol, finally spoke up, asking, "Where is Thor? Something happened in Asgard, and Thor went to deal with the problems there. Then why can't we wait for him to return before we act?" Carol looked at Strange, puzzled. Strange shook his head, "Because we don't have much time left. If the time stone were still there, Strange would have many ways to stop Laurie, but without it, he couldn't use time travel to accurately predict the future like he did against Thanos." Shang-Chi, recovering from the grief of losing the 4 bracelets, asked, "What should we do now?" After a moment's thought, Strange said, "You go to Asgard and wait for Thor to return. I'll go back to Kamartaj and try to bring Wanda back with the help of the other sorcerers. Hopefully, we still have time." The sorcerer surnamed Wang opened a portal and sent the others to a small town in Asgard, Norway, before taking Strange back to Kamartaj. Strange lost an arm, making it extremely difficult to open a dimensional portal and pinpoint Wanda's location. Another superhero involved in the operation but not publicly revealed himself was Ant-Man Scott Lang. With family and children, he was warned by Rory and immediately left the scene. Ant-Man Scott Lang didn't buy a plane ticket. After shrinking, he boarded a direct flight to San Francisco. Back home, as soon as he took off his Ant-Man suit, Hope, the second Wasp, walked in with a cup of coffee. "Hi Scott, I haven't seen you for over 20 hours. Where have you been?" "The weather's nice today, I went for a walk." Scott Lang smiled and told a small lie. Hope glanced at the overcast sky outside, threatening rain, and shook her head speechlessly. "I wonder what Kathy's been up to lately. If you have time, I think you should spend more time with your daughter." As they were talking, a series of screeching brakes came from outside. Looking out the window, they saw rows of military vehicles parked along the roadside, completely surrounding Ant-Man Scott Lang's house. Hope, who knew Ant-Man best, turned and asked, "You've gotten yourself into trouble again?" Ant-Man Scott smiled awkwardly, "Just a little bit, only a little bit." Click. Roar stepped off the military vehicle, with Iron Man Payne and Deathblade Anthony standing guard on either side of him, followed by a dozen super soldiers. Iron Man and Deathblade were nicknames they gave themselves. Every Avenger has their own nickname, and they wanted one too. When you're out in the world, you give yourself your identity. Seeing that it was Roar, Ant-Man Scott's heart pounded. Ding dong. Roar politely rang the doorbell. Hope came over and opened the door, asking, "Who are you looking for? This is Scott Lang's house, right? Are you Hope?" Roar smiled and glanced inside, just in time to see Scott sneaking around behind the door. The Ant-Man family, being 2 generations of superheroes, weren't impressed by Roar's entourage. Hope immediately said, "If Scott has done anything wrong, please contact our lawyers. If not, please leave." With a whoosh, Deathblade Anthony's bone blade appeared instantly, his eyes fixed on Hope with hostility. Rory smiled and waved his hand, "Don't be nervous. I'm a research consultant for the military lab. You can call me Rory. A few hours ago, we were attacked by Mr. Scott, Ant-Man. This isn't just a simple crime, so you'd better call him out for a chat, otherwise I'll have to forcibly take your family away." Hope's eyes widened as he turned to look at Scott behind the door. Scott shook his head, looking aggrieved. Hope had no choice but to step aside and let Rory into the house. Scott, who had been hiding behind the door, came out, looking at Rory with an awkward smile. Rory patted Ant-Man on the shoulder. "You're a smart man. You should be glad you made that choice." Entering the living room, Rory sat on the sofa and crossed his legs. His bodyguards, Steel Body Payne and Deathblade Anthony, stood behind him. Ant-Man Scott stood awkwardly a short distance away, scratching his head. Fortunately, Hope came over with coffee, breaking the awkward atmosphere. "Mr. Rory?" Hope pulled Scott to sit opposite Rory. Breaking the silence first, "Is there some misunderstanding here?" Rory smiled and said, "I believe Mr. Scott must have listened to some people's slander, but it's also a fact that he attacked me." Hope turned to look at Scott, hoping he could give a reasonable explanation. Ant-Man Scott hurriedly said, "Strange came to me. He said he was going to save the world, so I went with him." Hope slapped her forehead in exasperation after hearing this. Rory moved his fingers, and Payne immediately took out a document and handed it over. Rory placed the document on the table and said, "This is a control document issued by the Pentagon military. It has been approved by Congress. Effective immediately, Ant-Man Scott and his equipment will be under control. Until the restriction is lifted, Mr. Scott must wear a tracking device, otherwise he will be sent to a military court." Hope immediately picked up the document and began to read it. Normally, even if Scott were guilty, a trial would be required before the restraining order could be enforced. However, this document stated that the order was issued on the grounds of endangering national security and had been signed by Congress, essentially sentencing Scott directly. Rory continued, "I also have another matter to discuss. I heard Mr. Hank Pym is an expert in the quantum field, and I'd like to speak with him. Is that convenient?" Hope handed the restraining order to Scott, saying, "I need to make a call to my father." A few minutes later, Hope returned to the living room after making the call and said, "My father will be here shortly." "Scott, don't worry, the restraining order won't last long." About 20 minutes later, Hank Pym, along with his wife Janet, arrived at Scott's house to meet Rory. This wasn't the first time Rory and Hank Pym had met. They had met once before in 1970 at a New Jersey military base, though only briefly. Moreover, Rory had stolen 11 Pym Particles from him that time, leading to a complete break between Hank Pym and Howard Stark. "You want to see me?" Rory smiled, stood up, and extended his hand. "Dr. Pym, I've heard so much about you." Hope had already informed Hank Pym about Scott's situation over the phone. Although Hank Pym had a bad temper, he didn't give Rory a hard time because of Scott's matter. Rory directly stated his purpose. "I've heard that Dr. Pym is very knowledgeable about subatomic particles and the quantum realm. I have something here that I'd like Dr. Pym to take a look at." He took off a 10 ring and handed it to Hank Pym, then activated the remaining 3 10 rings in his hand with cosmic energy. Hank Pym took it with a puzzled look in his eyes. After observing the 10 rings for a moment, he immediately became interested. "I'm not quite sure what this thing is made of yet, but I guess it's an energy activation device. The energy entanglement should be almost the same as the release method of Pym particles." Rory was an authority in the field of biological genetics, but at most had a superficial understanding of other fields. Although Hank Pym's research on energy rays was limited, he was, after all, a researcher in the quantum realm, and his application of energy was definitely far superior to Rory's. "Oh? Could you elaborate?" Hank Pym shook his head. "It's too early to draw conclusions. I need some specialized equipment for analysis and research." Rory then abandoned Ant-Man Scott and drove directly to Dr. Pym's company laboratory. Chapter 72 The counterfeit Superman isn't Superman, he's a counterfeit. Dr. Pym's company, which researches quantum mechanics, possesses a wealth of advanced equipment. Because of their different fields, Rory was unfamiliar with the detailed parameters and specific uses of this equipment. Dr. Pym took a 10 ring from Rory and placed it on the instrument, first performing a composition scan, then an energy analysis. With the help of the equipment, he analyzed the various elemental components contained within the 10 ring. This is a metallic element that has never appeared on Earth before. It's extremely hard, and this metal also has the property of absorbing energy, Dr. Pym said, pointing to the pointer on the instrument's monitoring meter. "We can't detect exactly which type of energy it's absorbed yet, but the energy activity index is very stable." Dr. Pym then took out an energy emitter, adjusted the parameters and position, and began an energy activation test on the 10 ring. Whoosh! A beam of laser light precisely struck the 10 ring, and the previously calm ring immediately emitted a pale blue light. The reading on the monitoring meter rapidly increased, but there was no other reaction. The 10 rings struck by the laser didn't react, but the other 3 10 rings worn by Rory reacted. It seemed that some force had been activated, continuously flowing into Rory's body. "Dr. Pym, please stop." Rory immediately called out, briefly explaining the situation. Dr. Pym frowned and pondered for a moment, then said, "I suspect this is an energy transmission device. One side connects to an energy source, and the other side can transmit the same amount of energy over a long distance." Rory frowned and asked, "Is there any way to identify the composition of this thing in a short time?" Dr. Pym pondered for a moment and said, "Stark Industries has a micromolecular detector that can locate metal components, but unfortunately Tony Stark is no longer here. If you want to figure out the function of this thing, I suggest you talk to those mages." Rory curled his lip in disdain. Those mages wanted nothing more than to kill him. How could they possibly tell him the origin of this thing? Just then, his cell phone rang from his pocket. After answering, Ross's voice came from the other end. Rory frowned, then hung up and said to Dr. Pym, "I have something to do, so I'll head back first. Call me anytime if there are any new discoveries." "Okay," Scott's restraining order. Dr. Pym hesitated. Rory chuckled, "It's chaotic outside lately, it's safer for him to stay home. Also, I'd like to purchase some of Dr. Pym's Pym Particles if it's convenient." James Rhodes piloted the war machine to a nuclear-contaminated area. With a clatter, the suit landed, and several strangely looking green-skinned individuals immediately surrounded him. "What are you doing here?" The war machine's mask lifted, revealing Rhodes' face, which instantly transformed into a green-skinned version of the others. "I'm wanted by the federal government and the military. I can't stay there any longer." Inside the abandoned factory, Nick Fury and several green-skinned Skrulls sat at a table, arguing fiercely. "We must launch operations around the world and instigate wars as soon as possible, so that we Skrulls will have more opportunities. We just want a home where we can survive. There's no need to wage war." Even after the fake Rhodes, wearing the war machine, entered, the argument continued. The intelligence agency suddenly reported that a monster had attacked civilians on the streets of London, followed by 3 superhumans. Among them was Cersei, who worked at the museum. If there's anyone on Earth who could pose a threat to Rory right now, besides Thor, only the 10 Eternals remain. Rory personally killed 1, leaving 9, the most threatening of whom are the knockoff Superman Icarus and Tina, who can also conjure weapons. He originally planned to accumulate more power before dealing with the Eternals, but time was running out. The divine manifestation was about to begin. The celestial race born on Earth is called Shaimat. Rory didn't know their exact location, only that they were roughly near the Indian Ocean. Rory immediately notified Ross to set up a defense in the Indian Ocean, while he himself led his men to Ajik's residence. As Rory had expected, Ajik was now a cold corpse, lying alone in the backyard. He picked up Ajik's body and brought it back inside, conjuring an energy dagger which he held against Ajik's chest, then hesitated before putting it away. Rory had initially considered extracting the energy sphere from Ajik's body for research, but remembering that it was a magical artifact used to communicate with a 6-tube celestial, he abandoned the idea. "Sir, your order has arrived." Payne, in his steel body, knocked on the door and whispered from outside. Payne assumed Rory was grieving over Ajik's death, which was why he hadn't spoken loudly. Meanwhile, Anthony, the Death Blade, was unloading supplies from the vehicle. Rory, unsure when Cersei would arrive, had arranged for Anthony to prepare provisions for the next few days. Rory opened the door and took a box from Payne. Inside were vibranium-forged puncture needles and a testing kit. Back inside, he began extracting Ajik's blood and bone marrow. Rory continued his experiments with the Eternals in this environment. Under the microscope, Ajik's blood and bone marrow had completely lost their activity, but the intact tissue remained, not hindering Rory's cellular analysis. Several days passed quickly. Cersei and her group finally arrived at Ajik's residence in South Dakota. Payne and Anthony stood guard at the door. Icarus approached and asked first, "Who are you? Why are you here?" "This is Federation territory. I'm with the Federation military. Do I need to report to you why I'm here?" Payne scoffed, but the next second, Icarus grabbed his neck. Payne immediately used his superpower, his entire body hardening instantly. Icarus increased his grip slightly and found that this man was excessively hard. He couldn't budge him an inch without using his full strength. Whoosh! A bone knife appeared on the aloof Anthony's severed arm, his eyes fixed on Icarus. ready to strike at any moment. Icarus. Cersei stepped forward and stopped Icarus, then said to Payne and Anthony, "We are old friends of Ajak. May I ask who you are?" Click, the wooden door opened, and Rory stood behind it, nodding. "Come in." The appearance of Rory and his two companions puzzled Cersei, and Icarus beside her was also wondering what was going on. After Ajak was killed by the aberrant, it was Icarus who brought the body back. Now, with three strangers suddenly appearing, Icarus was completely confused. Cersei, Icarus, and the little elf entered the house and immediately saw Ajak lying on the ground. Ajak. Cersei rushed over, only to touch a cold corpse. Icarus turned to look at Rory. "You killed Ajak." Rory had been expecting this. The instant Icarus attacked, Rory conjured a shield to block Icarus's fist. Seeing the shield formed from cosmic energy, Icarus froze for a moment. In that split second, Rory kicked Icarus out of the house. Boom! Icarus crashed through the wooden wall and flew dozens of meters before slowly coming to a stop, hovering in midair. He glanced at Rory, then raised his fist and accelerated downwards. HMPH. Rory raised his hand to block Icarus's energy ray, then retracted his shield and threw a punch with all his might, colliding fiercely with Icarus's fist. Boom! A huge shockwave appeared, the already flimsy wooden house collapsed, and the weak Cersei and the little elf were also blown about. Rory's legs sank half a meter into the ground, while Icarus whooshed back at an even faster speed. Icarus was strong among the 10 Eternals, but still somewhat inferior to the Titan branch of the Eternals. Moreover, Rory had 410 rings on his hands, and with a physical suppression and energy boost, Icarus would find it difficult to defeat Rory in terms of strength. Icarus had never been treated like this before, and immediately flew to Rory's head and began to fire cosmic rays from his eyes. Sizzle. Rory easily conjured a shield to block the rays. At this moment, Rory finally understood what it felt like to force a 50-50 fight using Steve's shield. "I might not be able to beat you, but you won't beat me either." Just then, Cecily and the fairy, rising from the ruins of the cabin, were about to join the battle, but were both restrained by Payne and Anthony. Cecily's superpower was matter manipulation, able to transform any non-living matter into other forms, such as turning stone into water, wood, etc., while the fairy's superpower was creating illusions, just tricks to deceive. Their superpowers were practically useless in actual combat. Payne's powerful arm gripped the fairy's neck, while Anthony's bone knife was plunged into Cecily's throat. Icarus, who was about to continue, immediately stopped, warning, "Release my companions immediately." "Companions? Do you really consider them companions?" Rory chuckled, sheathing his shield. "Trying to sow discord between us is useless, and you have no idea how dangerous the situation is. You'd better release us immediately," Cecily added, but Rory ignored her. Rory turned to Cersei and said calmly, "You don't really think I killed Ajak, do you?" Cersei was taken aback and asked, "If it wasn't you, then where did your abilities come from?" "Ajak taught me, of course. She taught me how to use cosmic energy, but unfortunately, she died at the hands of her own people." Rory said this while looking at Icarus. Hearing Rory's words, Icarus's expression immediately changed, and she couldn't help but rush towards Rory again. "Icarus, calm down," Cersei shouted, immediately stopping Icarus. Then, staring at Rory, she asked, "What do you mean by that? Do you know who killed Ajak?" Judging from the manner of Ajak's death, Cersei could conclude that it was an abnormal being who killed Ajak, but Rory's words seemed to imply something else. Rory glanced at Icarus disdainfully and replied, "I was here a few months ago, and I left a few cameras behind when I left. I just happened to capture someone's actions." Chapter 73. On behalf of all humanity on Earth, I thank you. "What do you mean? Explain yourself." Cersei looked at Rory with a gloomy expression. Rory waved his hand, signaling Payne and Anthony to release the two. Payne released the elf and ran to the car, taking out a tablet and handing it to Rory. He tapped a few times on the tablet and handed it to Cersei. Cersei and the elf looked at it together, and after a moment, they both looked at Icarus in midair with unfamiliar eyes. Icarus immediately said urgently, "Cersei, he's trying to sow discord between us. Don't you believe me? Then can you explain what happened?" Cersei held up the tablet and looked at Icarus. After Icarus landed and finished reading the contents of the tablet, his face turned pale and then red. It recorded how Icarus took Ajak away and how he brought Ajak's body back. As the leader of the 10, to be killed by his own comrade in such an inexplicable way was something neither Cersei nor the elf could understand. Yes, I killed her, but I had my reasons. Icarus glanced at Rory, angrily saying, since you don't believe me, then so be it. With that, Icarus took off and vanished into the clouds in the blink of an eye. Icarus's departure left Cersei and the sprite feeling melancholy. They had come here to find Ajak and learn about the reappearance of the aberrants. Without Icarus's protection, they would likely die if attacked by the aberrants again. Cersei slowly approached Ajak's corpse. Suddenly, a sphere floated out of Ajak's chest and then entered Cersei's body. The next second, everything before Cersei's eyes disappeared, replaced by a giant six-tube god, Euristum. Before Cersei could react, it vanished again in the blink of an eye, returning to the ruins of Ajak's hut. Laura then approached and whispered, that man was Icarus, right? I know why he killed Ajak. Why? Cersei turned to look at Rory. Rory said softly, because Earth is about to be destroyed, Ajak wanted to save it, but Icarus disagreed. It's that simple. Cersei and the elf stared at Rory in shock. How is that possible? The Eternals came to Earth to protect its inhabitants from the aberrant, yet Rory said Icarus wanted to destroy it. This reason seemed utterly absurd to them. But upon reflection, Cersei realized there was no more reasonable explanation. Why would he do this? Rory shrugged. There are good people and bad people in the world. What's there to doubt? The repeated shocks left Cersei's mind in turmoil. Their mission was clearly to protect, so how did it become destruction? Rory sat down on a plank and said softly, Ajak taught me how to use cosmic energy. She was like a mentor to me. She also told me many stories about the Eternals. If she had a secret, why would she tell a stranger something she hadn't shared with her companions for thousands of years? If she didn't have a secret, then why did Ajak die? Cersei decided to stay and listen to Rory's explanation. A campfire had been built near the car, and Rory and the others sat around it while Anthony and Payne prepared dinner. Rory began to tell a story. The Eternals and the Deviants are actually created by the Celestials through genetic modification of humans. The Celestials also plant celestial seeds on every planet with life. Once the number of lives on that planet reaches a certain level, a Celestial will be born, but at the same time, the planet and all life on it will be destroyed. Countless planets have had their lives harvested by the Celestials. And now Earth is also on the countdown to destruction, so... Rory turned to Cersei, the firelight reflecting his serious expression, and continued, Cersei, only you can save Earth now. Are you willing to help us? Cersei had already integrated into human society and felt a sense of belonging to this planet. Rory had truncated the beginning and end of the story, adapting it from facts to provide a sense of being needed and a mission, aiming to guide Cersei to help Earth. Cersei's heart stirred upon hearing this. But, Cersei, you are a born savior and leader. That's why Ajak chose you. Cersei wasn't swayed by Rory's words, she knew her abilities wouldn't allow her to accomplish this. She hesitated, but I really can't. Rory removed a 10 ring and placed it on Cersei's wrist, then activated the other 3 rings, gathering all his energy into them. The ring on Cersei's wrist immediately received the energy transfer, a surge of cosmic energy rushing into her body. Rory had previously thought that the 10 rings were a perfect match for the 10 Eternals. Wasn't that too much of a coincidence? This is a device that can conduct cosmic energy. As long as more energy is gathered for you, you can definitely do it. Cersei sensed it, her strength had indeed increased. However, after Rory stopped transferring energy, her strength returned to normal. If I had this, I might give it a try. This was exactly what Rory had been waiting for, and he immediately said, Cersei, on behalf of all humanity, I thank you for your help. The strength of just a few of us isn't enough, I need more companions, Cersei said firmly after making her choice. I'll arrange it. Rory took out his phone and called Ross, asking him to arrange a private jet immediately. Ross naturally obeyed unconditionally. Wherever they went, he could use military aircraft from the nearest military base's transportation. Cersei began to plan the route. We'll first go to Chicago to find Phastos, then Australia to find Tina and Gilgamesh, and the Golden Fruit in Mumbai. Finally, we'll find the Druids living in seclusion in the Amazon rainforest, gather everyone, and then return to the Domo ship to rendezvous with Makari. As for Icarus, I want to try to persuade him again. Rory interrupted, if he objects or tries to stop me, I will definitely kill him, Cersei. I hope you can understand my predicament. Cersei nodded bitterly. Half an hour later, a military helicopter arrived and picked them up, taking them to Chicago, where they would transfer to a transport plane to Australia. On the plane, Rory approached the elf, greeted her, and asked, "I heard from Ajik that you can never grow up, is that true?" The elf glanced at Rory and then nodded. Everyone else could enjoy a normal life, but she had remained a child for thousands of years, unable even to fall in love. Rory's lips curled into a slight smile, and he chuckled, "I'm actually a biologist, perhaps I can help you." "How?" The elf looked up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes, but it quickly faded. "Your inability to continue growing is definitely related to the cosmic energy genes within you. I've done research on this, and if I can suppress this energy within you, you can naturally grow normally." "Really?" "Of course." Rory not only drew blood from the elf but also from Circe. The 10 Eternals each possessed different superpowers, but Rory still hadn't figured out how cosmic energy worked. This was a good opportunity to collect more blood samples. If he could gather all the Eternals' superpowers, Rory might become a true god among men. The plane landed in Chicago, and Cecily led the group to Fantas's house according to the address. Rory followed casually. Fantas was obviously not home. After searching unsuccessfully, Cecily decided to look for the others first. "Fantas hasn't been home for months. We can't just stay here waiting. Rory, please help us find Fantas." "Of course, no problem." Rory readily agreed, but this was destined to be an unanswered question. If it weren't for his inability to handle the resurgence of the celestial Shaimat, Rory would have captured all the Eternals for research. After picking up the abomination Bronski from New York, Rory, along with steel-bodied Pain and Deathblade Anthony, plus the Eternal Circe and the Little Elf, transferred to a military transport plane at the military base closest to Chicago and flew directly to Australia. Tina and Gilgamesh were living in seclusion in Australia. Tina's superpowers were similar to Rory's. She could materialize various weapons using cosmic energy. Tina suffered from eternal demon syndrome, and when her episodes occurred, she would indiscriminately attack everyone around her, making it almost impossible for her to integrate into human society. That's why she chose to live in seclusion in a remote, impoverished area. Gilgamesh could conjure gauntlets and possessed even greater strength. Worried that Tina couldn't take care of herself, he stayed behind to accompany her. When Rory and Circe arrived, Tina was sitting under a withered tree drawing something. Gilgamesh, unfazed, calmly prepared dinner. Circe briefly introduced Rory, then told Gilgamesh about the reappearance of the deviants, the death of Ajik, and the impending destruction of Earth. Rory approached Tina from behind and discovered that she had drawn Aristom, the six-tube god. Only after she finished drawing did Rory speak. "You look like you need help." Tina turned around. "Who are you?" Rory, a biologist, came with Circe. Tina coldly turned her head back and said softly, "You can't help me." "Perhaps I can. How about I give you a checkup first?" Rory pulled out a syringe, thinking of giving Tina a stab. Just then, Tina's eyes suddenly rolled back, and 2 weapons appeared in her hands. Mr. Rory was startled, then immediately put away the syringe. "Damn, she's having an attack." Whoosh! Tina stood there for a few seconds, then suddenly swung her weapon at Rory. Clang! Rory was quick. The moment she slashed, he materialized a shield to block Tina's attack, and his other hand conjured a longsword. They exchanged blows, each striking the other. The sound quickly attracted the attention of others nearby. Gilgamesh rushed over and knocked Tina unconscious with a single punch. Gilgamesh helped Tina up and looked at Rory with a probing gaze. Chapter 74. These stories, though seemingly deceptive, are all adapted from facts. Back at Tina's residence, while Tina was unconscious, Rory drew a blood sample. He stood up and turned to her, saying, "You say she has eternal demon syndrome because of past memories, and that treatment requires erasing those memories again?" The other Eternals nodded. Rory continued, "In the biological realm, this is explained as a self-protective mechanism of the brain's nerves being unable to withstand stimulation. Erasing memories only provides temporary stability. The next attack will only be more severe. After several recurrences, her brain will definitely collapse. Is there any solution?" Gilgamesh asked urgently. Rory nodded. Relieving nerve stress is obviously achieved with medication, but Eternals are not suited to human drugs. Currently, the only solution is to suppress the nerves and alleviate the neural conflict caused by stimulation. Before Gilgamesh could rejoice, Rory added, "There are no treatment options available now, and we have more important matters to address. I will treat her after saving Earth. Tina is tormented by eternal demon syndrome, the source of which lies with the Celestials. Countless images of destruction flood her mind, driving her to the brink of madness. Therefore, she stands on the side of humanity and Earth. Gilgamesh and Tina had spent thousands of years alone together, and to protect Tina, he would also stand on the side of humanity. Rory lured them with benefits, expanding the group to include the two again. After spending the night together, the group set off for Mumbai to find King Fruit, who worked in the entertainment industry. King Fruit readily joined the team, even bringing his butler. Rory, under the pretext of treating Tina's illness, subsequently drew blood samples from both Gilgamesh and King Fruit. They then flew to the Amazon rainforest to find the druid living in seclusion there. The druid's superpower was mind control. His combat ability was average, but his superpower was incredibly powerful, the ability to control groups, though not as strong as Professor X or Scarlet Witch. In the original timeline, everyone pooled their power for the druid, hoping he could hypnotize the soon-to-be awakened celestial Shyamat, but after a great deal of effort, they only managed to delay the celestial's awakening for a few minutes. Even without Icarus, the druid's abilities would likely be insufficient to save the Earth. When the group arrived in the Amazon rainforest and found the druid's location, they were surprised to discover that Icarus had found them before them. The atmosphere immediately tensed when Rory and Icarus met. After their previous encounter, Rory had no worries about this fake Superman. Without his flight ability, Icarus's theoretical combat strength would struggle to even rank in the A class. He could fly, had strength, and could shoot cosmic energy rays from his eyes, seemingly powerful, but in reality, he was only half-baked, with limited offensive capabilities. If Captain Marvel fought Icarus, she would almost certainly win. Icarus. Cersei stepped forward, trying to persuade him to change his mind. Icarus scoffed, "Are you sure you want to go with a stranger who suddenly appeared? But you killed Ajak, you shouldn't have done that. Ajak betrayed the gods." Icarus argued forcefully. From their perspective, it's difficult to determine right from wrong, because Icarus and the Celestials didn't care about Earth and humanity. In their eyes, humans were nothing but ants. "Huh. You're just a lackey of the Celestials, no need to portray yourself as so great," Rory sneered. "You're the one who betrayed your comrades, I merely exposed your murder of Ajak. You're asking for death?" Icarus, enraged, unleashed an energy beam from his eyes and charged towards Rory. Bang! Rory blocked the beam and exchanged a punch with Icarus. Both staggered backward, but Icarus was faster. Before Rory could land, Icarus hoisted him onto his shoulder and soared into the sky. Flight was Rory's most desired superpower, yet he couldn't obtain it. The knockoff Superman Icarus carried Rory high into the air. On the ground, he was no match for Rory, and even his most prized ability, the vision beam, was ineffective. The simplest way to kill Rory was to throw him into outer space. Rory had guessed Icarus's intentions, materializing two daggers in his hands and stabbing them into Icarus's kidneys. Icarus didn't have a body of steel, even ordinary abnormal beings could harm Eternals, let alone withstand Rory's attack. Icarus reacted quickly, throwing Rory away the moment the daggers came at him. Due to inertia, Rory continued to rise. Icarus glanced at the dagger holes on either side of his waist, annoyed but also somewhat relieved, thankful he had reacted quickly enough. Otherwise he would have been stabbed through by Rory. Without Ajax's healing, Icarus's recovery ability was very limited. He snorted and flew towards Rory again, preparing to push him out of the atmosphere once more. Just as he was about to reach him, a 3-meter-long golden greatsword slammed down on his forehead. Clang. While in midair, Rory couldn't unleash his full power, but the blow still stunned Icarus. From the top of his head to his brow, Rory had slashed a blood-red gash. On the ground, Rory's full-force attack might have even split Icarus's head in two. Icarus's eyes rolled back, and he fell into a brief coma. Losing his lift, Rory began to plummet rapidly, the wind whistling in his ears, his clothes whipping wildly through the air. Sheathing his golden greatsword, which transformed into a full-body suit of golden armor, Rory adjusted his body and landed with a resounding crash back into the Amazon rainforest. Cosmic energy erupted beneath his feet, creating a 5-meter-wide crater. Boom. Another crash followed, and Icarus landed near Rory. Moments later, Icarus awoke from his coma, opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was Rory holding an energy sword to his throat, staring at him with an incomprehensible smile. Just as Icarus was about to speak, his eyes widened in disbelief and reluctance. Thud. A blade formed from cosmic energy pierced Icarus's throat, severing his cervical vertebrae in two. The knockoff Superman, Icarus, had fallen, dying with his eyes wide open in disbelief. A few minutes later, when Laurie's men and the Eternals arrived at the crash site, they only saw Laurie dragging Icarus's body back. Everyone stared in disbelief at Icarus's corpse, and tears streamed down Cersei's face. Laurie approached and whispered, "I'm sorry, Cersei, I didn't expect this." Cersei shook her head, sadly knelt down, and gently stroked Icarus's cold face with her fingers. They had once been married in front of everyone, only to disappear suddenly after living together for a while. Even with all his faults, Icarus was still someone Cersei had once loved. Just as Rory was about to say a few words to comfort Cersei, a monster suddenly appeared, grabbed Cersei, and tried to fly her into the sky. Whoosh! Rory reacted the fastest, leaping up to catch Cersei, conjuring a spear in his hand, and stabbing it fiercely into the monster's body. Roar! The monster, in pain, instinctively released its grip, and Cersei fell back to the ground, where Gilgamesh caught her safely. At the same time, several monsters rushed out of the forest, and the defenseless elves and druids panicked and scattered. One of the monsters charged at the steel-bodied Pain, its skin hardening instantly with a crack, and the monster nearly shattered its teeth with a single bite. Roar! Blonsky roared, transforming into an abomination, grabbing the monster gnawing on Pain and throwing it away. Whoosh! Anthony, the Death Blade, brandished his bone knife, dodging the attacking monster, and swung his blade back, but unfortunately, it wasn't sharp enough to inflict much damage. Gilgamesh and Tina joined the battle, each taking on an average of one abomination, so the pressure wasn't too great. Pain, lacking combat ability, could only protect the equally defenseless bride as they retreated. Bronsky, transformed into abomination, grabbed one and relentlessly hammered it, with Anthony adding finishing blows. Just as Abomination was about to finish off the Abomination, an even more powerful Abomination, the Beast King, appeared, slapping Abomination to the ground. Coincidentally, Tina suddenly suffered a relapse of her eternal demon syndrome. With Abomination entangled in the battle with the other Abominations, Gilgamesh was left to face the Beast King alone. The Beast King noticed Tina struggling with her eternal demon syndrome and immediately turned towards her. Gilgamesh, trying to protect Tina, fell right into the Beast King's trap. The Beast King bit Gilgamesh's neck, several tentacles piercing his body, and streams of energy transferred from Gilgamesh to the Beast King. Moments later, the Beast King's body began to change, evolving into a humanoid form. Discarding Gilgamesh's corpse, the Beast King turned his attention back to Tina. Die? At the critical moment, Laurie, who had just killed a deviant, finally arrived on the battlefield. Before the Beast King could attack Tina, Laurie severed the Beast King's arm with a single strike, leaving a large wound on his chest. However, the Beast King had absorbed Ajik's power and quickly recovered. Seeing a formidable opponent, the Beast King immediately abandoned his plan to absorb Tina and turned to flee. Laurie wanted to pursue the Beast King, but then the Druid and Cersei encountered trouble and had to turn back to help. With Laurie's arrival, the sudden battle quickly ended. 5 deviants were eliminated, but Gilgamesh was lost. I've arranged for a military plane to come over. Take the bodies back with them. It would be troublesome if they fell into the hands of that aberrant Beast King. The military plane picked everyone up and returned to the military base. During the rest period, Rory extracted blood and bone marrow samples from Icarus and Gilgamesh. Since they were already dead, keeping them was a waste. After the rest period, they immediately headed to the location of the Domo spaceship. On the Domo spaceship was also the lightning-wielding woman, Makari. She was incredibly fast, but deaf and mute, and had a good relationship with a curry-loving man, Kingo. The problem now is that we don't know where the soon-to-awaken god Shyamut is. So we can't put him back into hibernation. The people on the Domo spaceship discussed countermeasures. Rory then said, Ajik once told me that the general location is in the Indian Ocean, but the exact location might only be known after we get there. Then let's set off. Cersei, assuming leadership, immediately ordered a departure for the Indian Ocean. The Domo spaceship arrived in the Indian Ocean and saw a volcano billowing thick smoke in the distance, seemingly ready to erupt at any moment. Upon landing, they saw the seawater churning and the ground shaking. Shyamut is about to wake up, we must act quickly. Chapter 75. Want a huge mine. Whoever finds it keeps it. The volcano erupted, the earth shook violently, and lava surged from the ground and the mountain. The earth sank, towering waves hundreds of feet high surged and churned, and 5 great mountains slowly rose from the seabed. Rory took off his 10 rings and handed one to Cersei, who immediately ran towards the nearby volcano. The rest of the Eternals surrounded Rory. Tina, the elf, the druid, the Indian curry man Golden Fruit, the lightning woman Makari, and even Rory himself, everyone poured their energy into their 10 rings. The massive energy injected into the rings materialized into golden cosmic energy, forming a line that instantly transmitted to Cersei's hand. Rumble. Before Cersei could even reach her destination, the ground beneath her feet suddenly split open, revealing a dazzling golden expanse. She was standing on the palm of the god Shyamut, seemingly endless. Cersei roared, pressing her hands onto the golden ground and immediately activating her matter transformation superpower. As the cosmic energy from the other Eternals was transferred, Cersei's matter conversion superpower exploded, rapidly petrifying Shyamut's hand and then gradually spreading to his entire body. Shyamut's golden hand, piercing the sky, gradually turned white under Cersei's matter conversion, and its speed of emerging from the ground stopped. But Cersei did not stop her superpower. With the injection of more energy, the converted matter extended along Shyamut's arm towards the Earth's core, finally reaching the head emerging from the ground on the other side. Just as everyone was about to succeed, the Abomination Beast King, who had escaped earlier, quietly appeared behind them. The Abomination Beast King looked at everyone with a sinister and vicious gaze, then charged towards them at high speed. Roar! The Beast King leaped high, preparing to interrupt everyone's ritual. Suddenly, another roar rang out, and Bronski transformed into an abomination, jumping up and grabbing the Beast King, slamming him to the other side. How could Rory not be on guard? And there was more than just an abomination coming. Steel-bodied Pain and Deathblade Anthony, along with nearly 30 super soldiers, surged in from all directions, charging towards the Beast King. Rory, who was transferring energy, turned and shouted, "Take him alive!" The celestial Shyamut's head was already half emerging from the ground. Cersei frantically poured cosmic energy into Shyamut until his entire body was petrified. Moments later, the flame of life in Shyamut's eyes gradually died down, and a crisis concerning the life and death of Earth was finally averted. The Eternals collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Rory gently waved his hand, and the 10 rings in Cersei's hand instantly flew back to Rory's wrist. "I'll go take care of that thing." After giving a shout, Rory leaped 100 meters, bouncing twice to arrive in front of the aberrant Beast King. Roar! The Beast King roared, forcefully shoving aside the abomination, and was about to get up when Rory landed. Wearing golden armor enveloped in cosmic energy, Rory clasped his fists together and slammed them heavily onto the Beast King's forehead. Thump! The Beast King's four eyes rolled back, and it was knocked unconscious. Tie it up. Anomalies are excellent experimental subjects, and this one, a super Beast King that absorbed the energy of Ajak and Gilgamesh, is even more valuable for research. Afterwards, Rory summoned the Night Legion squad leader. "Is everything arranged?" The Night Legion squad leader immediately replied, "The military has dispatched 3 fleets to blockade this area." Rory nodded, "Go inform Ross that this place will belong to me personally. Tell him to send a professional mining team over as soon as possible. I want to move my laboratory here, and also have him provide me with equipment and construction resources." Rory didn't know what the Celestials' bodies were made of, but he knew that after being transformed by Cersei, their bodies had become one of the hardest metals in the universe, adamantium. A large quantity is plentiful, and its value is self-evident. Whoever obtains more adamantium will have more say in the future world. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye after the Celestials' resurrection event ended. Several major events occurred during these 3 months. First, Ross successfully ran for president of the Federation, elevating his Eternal Society to new heights. Second, the international community was embroiled in a fierce dispute over the ownership of Celestial Island, but no one dared to set foot on it. Initially, some tried to go, but were thrown into the sea by Abomination, Rory's top henchman. The most serious incident involved a military conflict with India, where Rory personally led 30 super soldiers to annihilate an entire Indian fleet, immediately subduing India. Third, Rory moved his laboratory to Celestial Island and built a city-state factory there, specifically for mining adamantium. Rory landed on Celestial Island by helicopter, where a palace under construction rose from the distance. "Rory, it's time to say goodbye," Cersei said, approaching with a group of Eternals. Tina and the elf would stay with Rory. Once the laboratory was completed, Rory would address their physical issues. King is returning to Mumbai to continue his Bollywood star career, while the Druid and Macquarie will pilot the Domo spaceship to search for the Eternals on other planets. Cersei is preparing to return to London to spend the rest of her life with her boyfriend, Dane Whitman. Tina and the elf are in your care. Call me anytime if needed. Rory nodded. See you again sometime. After seeing Cersei and the others off, Rory went to his newly built laboratory, which housed all of his experimental materials, including the living aberrant Beast King. After absorbing the energy of Ix and Gilgamesh, the Beast King had completely transformed into an intelligent being. Sitting quietly in its cage, it faced Tina outside. Rory approached, and Tina, whose back was to him, whispered, "This ugly thing killed Gilgamesh. You should let me kill it." Rory chuckled, "Don't rush, I'll grant your wish, but you'll have to wait a little longer." Live experiments are naturally more valuable, especially with a Beast King. Rory certainly wanted to study it carefully. Tina didn't care about the short time, because Gilgamesh had accompanied her for thousands of years, helping her fight against the Eternal Demon Syndrome. She never expected him to lose his life at the last moment, and Tina wanted nothing more than to tear the Beast King apart. "You just stay here and watch over it. As long as you don't let it escape or die, you can do whatever you want with it." Tina's Eternal Demon Syndrome couldn't be cured yet, but as long as she used the inhibitors made by Rory regularly, it was unlikely that she would relapse. Rory went to his private testing area, entering his fingerprint and password to unlock the 20-centimeter thick metal door. Inside, he walked to a collection cabinet filled with various blood samples, serums, and test tubes of medicine. All the experimental equipment, blood samples, serums, and even the immortal Hollis from the military base had been moved to Celestial Island. Seeing all this, Rory felt a great sense of accomplishment. After so much hard work, he had finally amassed a considerable fortune. He took out a blood sample from the knockoff Superman Icarus to study, hoping to find clues about Icarus's flight ability at the genetic level. However, the reality was far more difficult than Rory had imagined, even bordering on hopeless. Beep 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 beep, the lab communicator rang, and the cold voice of Deathblade Anthony came through. "Doctor, President Ross wishes to meet with you." "Understood, I'll be right there." Rory removed his protective suit and stepped out of the lab. President Ross was waiting with a group of officials in the small square outside. "Dr. Rory." Ross greeted Rory with a smile. "Let me introduce you. These are ministers from the Federation, and also directors of our Eternal Life Society." The Federation ministers nodded and smiled at Rory. Rory gestured with his chin and said, "Let's talk over there." The group was currently in the core area of the Heavenly Island construction site. To the east was a palace under construction, to the north was Rory's experimental research center, and to the south, directly opposite the lab, were the temporary residences for his subordinates. To the west, directly opposite the palace, was a wide road extending to a temporary dock by the sea, with many temporary residences already built on both sides. Seeing the architectural layout, Ross already guessed Rory's intentions. He was treating Celestial Island as his own territory. Ross also saw many familiar figures, such as the 30 super soldiers using the enhancement serum, Abomination Bronsky, and the 2 experimental volunteers, Payne and Anthony, whom he had personally sent to Rory. These people were either patrolling and guarding, or supervising the construction. Seeing the look in the new president's eyes, Rory smiled and said, "These people are only temporarily on loan, they will be returned to the military later." This explanation was to give face to the new president. Whether they would be returned was something everyone knew. Rory couldn't build Celestial Island alone, and Ross was someone he had helped to get to the presidency. Cooperation would be simpler. The group arrived at a makeshift office. After sitting down, Rory spoke first, asking, "Mr. President, you've brought all these ministers here, it's not just for a reunion, is it?" President Ross nodded and said in a low voice, "The international dispute over the ownership of Celestial Island continues. I'm mainly here to ask for your opinion. Celestial Island actually consists of 2 islands, one is Shyamut's head, and the other is Shyamut's right hand. The rest are buried deep underwater and underground. Although it was heavily guarded at the time, news of adamantium was still leaked by those with ulterior motives. As one of the 4 great metals of the universe, adamantium is naturally coveted by everyone. Whether used in industry or the military, it would significantly enhance strength, potentially creating 2 completely different levels. The difference would be like that between Wakanda and the savage tribes of the neighboring country, vast and immense. Some private companies even wanted to mine it underwater, but if caught, their ships would be confiscated, and the personnel would be sent to Celestial Island to mine and do hard labor. Currently, a portion of Heavenly Island is managed by mining companies, while the remaining miners are all Indians captured by Rory. Rory, of course, knew that Ross was also eyeing the adamantium alloy, and calmly said, "I will share the adamantium alloy, but not now. Let's discuss this topic after this place is built." The construction of Heavenly Island isn't just about manpower, electricity, oil, population, food, and so on all rely on external supplies. Without the help of Federal President Ross, Heavenly Island couldn't have developed to its current state so quickly. Since Ross had come all this way, Rory couldn't let him go empty-handed. "I've prepared some samples for you, you can take them back for research." Rory gave Ross face, and Ross, accepting the offer, smiled and said a few polite words before moving on to another topic. 2 more chapters tonight. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.